Okay, recorder's going. Hi, we're going to open the City Council Finance Subcommittee meeting of May 8th, 2013. First item on the agenda is prior minutes of April 23rd, 13. Did you have a chance?
I did have a chance to read them. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the prior meeting of 4/23/13.
So I got to retype it. Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Mayor's communication.
Nothing in addition to the budget.
We don't want to public speak. Anyone here want to speak? Since public safety and public works aren't on the budget agenda, I assume the two esteemed gentlemen here are here to assessors.
Are they here for general government?
I think they're in general government assessors. Yep. I assume you gentlemen are here to hear the discussion on the supplemental funding, is that correct? So why don't we jump to continuing business first.
I don't mind if this is, I mean, you don't care if the minutes are in order.
No. I know you got it. Just first, Justin, on the senior work-off, do you have more on that, or do you want to continue it, or it's up to you, whatever you want to.
Well, I thought we were going to do the funding.
No, I just asked him about that. If he has more, we'll do it.
It's not a pressing issue. I don't have any more on it. The information on this about for it.
So why don't we put that to the end of the meeting? We'll discuss it, and then we'll do.
If you want to continue it.
Okay.
It's fine. We've got a pretty full roll.
Okay. So we'll continue. That's okay with you, Dan. We'll continue Justin's
Whatever the chair wants.
senior. I like to work as a team. Okay, so we'll discuss the, and I know, Justin, you were the one specifically asked for more time about the supplemental funding budget request to $422,838 for an ambulance and dump truck. I would like to at least give Superintendent Pipchinsky a chance to, because I know he was called away for a family emergency at the last meeting and wasn't able to attend. If he has any specific comments about the dump truck and its need.
You have a little one-page thing that you gave us.
That he had sent.
Right. Well, what it comes down to is we have 5 standards. One of them is already out of service, so we're already down to 4. So we've got to start the next winter with 4 standards, not 5. The new truck, if it's ordered today, it's still going to take probably 9 months to get here. So that's going to be.
Why so long?
It's going to get to build it.
Yeah?
It's not something you just go pick off a lot somewhere. They've got to build it. We got to send it to other manufacturers to have the body put on it and the snowplow put on it, things like that. So there's time involved in moving this thing around and getting 2 or 3 vendors lined up to do what they need to do. The other thing is we've got it 95 that's 18 years old. So if we postpone this one too much longer, we're going to be looking at probably 2 very, very soon. So the fact that we're reframing one truck and putting a dump body on the other it helps us, but doesn't bail us out from this one. That's the way I see it.
So it's a brand new one.
This will be a brand new one.
How good is the 95 one? Is that going to last a couple of years?
We might get another 2 years out of that one.
I have that. I thought you already said that.
Well, sort of. Any other questions for the superintendent? Mr. Cobb? Councilor Cobb?
No, the information that was provided was for what we're voting on was kind of sufficient for them.
And how about Chief Motter? Any questions for Chief Motter, or Chief Motter have anything additional? I know you came to the last meeting and spoke.
Nope, nothing additional, just in case there's any questions from councilors.
Okay, I'll open up the item for any debate or further.
Well, I did ask for this because I wanted to kind of do a litmus test of pros and cons and see if one outshined the other. It came down to that, wasn't helpful at all. I came up with as many pros and cons. It boils down to 2 things for me. It's On the pro side, I like the idea that Melissa's coming forward with a unique idea, and on the downward side, it's the, even though it's very small, it's adding, so to say, another debt liability to our budget that is a concern to me. I go back and forth just about every night and every week with this request, because I don't have any clear losers and winners here. All I have is confliction.
Just say yes.
I'm going to be sure and confident of my vote. I did say I come here prepared to vote tonight. I am prepared to vote tonight. So I'll leave it at that.
Good. Councilor Rist?
I'm in favor of supporting the treasurer on this, finance director. I feel that it is a unique program, unique to Easthampton, and I have to compliment the mayor in that we have not done this over the years, but I don't see our free cash, our future free cash capability, given recent history, of being able to purchase such large items. And I'm confident that we'll get this paid off in a few years, that we as counselors will keep an eye on any increase in debt that goes beyond this. Probably I wouldn't vote for it unless I knew that this program worked. I see the main problem I see, and we could say let's put off the ambulances until free cash comes in next year. That chews up a lot of free cash for the smaller things we know we're going to need. If we need a couple of police cars, anything else. I'd like to try this. I'd like to give the finance director the benefit of the doubt that she's done this before. Other cities and towns use it. That doesn't mean it's the best one. I agree with you. But it is being used, and I think it's the only way we're going to get these two items, which we desperately need. Especially listening about the truck, and I know the last time we talked about another ambulance that's way up in miles. So I'd like to give the finance director a chance to prove that this will work before we say no to it. That's my main reason for voting yes.
Just letting Tim talk, the idea is, if we're to try something new and different, I'm just tossing this out as an idea. Is there a way to put some type of metric on it so we can say, if we meet these certain thresholds, this is either not a good thing to continue or this is a good thing to continue? And I'm just tossing it in my head too, trying to see if I can come up with some type of, so that the next council that comes in, if you see a request for form, and the original one did meet certain metrics, like the cost of interest increasing over the length of the term of the loan or something like
If I could suggest, why don't you compare it to a lease? Since a lease doesn't require your authority, the way that the departments could do it is to come in and include a lease payment. And so the metric you should be comparing this to is another way of acquisition that doesn't mean cash. And so the only logical metric to compare it to, well, there's two, would be either compare this rolling financing mechanism to going out for a 3-year bond. Take a look at what the difference in interest is if you were to borrow for 3 years as opposed to this one at a time, which is really what we're looking at. Or compare it to if we went and did a 4-year lease, because they don't do leases any shorter than that, I don't believe. What's the difference in carrying cost? And you'll find that this is cheaper than both of those methods. But that's the metric that you should compare it to. You shouldn't compare it to a cash purchase, because we can't afford to make this cash purchase, and we need to make it.
I don't think you should overlook the cost of not doing it, because there is a cost to repairs and renting of vehicles per storm.
I think we had some discussion about that already. And the bonding agreement, is the interest rate going to stay stable for the length of the bond?
Well, the idea I had for these right now was bands, and bands are 1 year, and you renew them every year. Band rates are traditionally lower than bond rates. Bond rates right now are in the 3 to 4 range. I mean, I could do a bond on this, but but the band rate that I got just last week was 0.38.
So the cost is roughly 10%. The carrying cost is 10% of what it would be if we bonded it. And bonding is probably 80% of what it would be to lease. Lease is probably 4.25,
Yeah,
4.5.
the lowest I've seen is 4.15.
And so this is the least expensive. The concept, and I don't want to speak for the next administration, but the concept that Melissa and I have talked about is that depending upon what free cash looks like, there would likely be some sort of a carve-out in the fall to make a payment. So that when it's rolled over in the second year, the amount that's being rolled is less. So if the borrow is, was it 290,000, I think that's the number. And if 100,000 is paid off with a direct appropriation into the debt during this coming fiscal year, then she'll roll 195,000. At, who knows then, maybe 0.5, maybe 0.7, but it'll still be less than the 3 or 3.5 that we would have got a bond for. And it gives, I think, a couple of things. It gives the city council a little leverage to say, we think you should apply more of the free cash to the debt. So we get a chance to talk about it next year. Because you're going to be asked for an appropriation, and you can then weigh that portion of the appropriation against what might be available in liquid reserves. That is free cash. And you get to have a conversation about, is it enough of it? Is enough of that debt being paid off? And you can talk about the trade-offs, what you're not going to be able to buy if you decide to spend $150,000 instead of $100,000. Clearly, it'll be the mayor's appropriation, but in my mind, the reason I'm comfortable with this is it really is the most cooperative way to move this forward, so that everybody's still talking about it every time a decision is made.
I like the check and balance that we have. I like the fact that what you just said, we can't remember that. I know state finance law won't allow us to write into the appropriation something like no new bonding shall be allowed until this bonding for such purposes is paid off, but I think the mayors have the authority to request it. We just as councilors can say, no, you didn't pay that off. We'd all have to still be here. You're not going to be here, so hopefully I get elected again. But anyway, I would say quite sternly that I won't approve bonding for this kind of a purchase until this is paid off, until we see how well it did, what the interest was, what its history was. I won't vote again for another one of these, but I really think we ought to try this. And I'm happy to see the mayor's much more comfortable with it than I think he was when it first was presented to him. I think you've been pretty good, Mike, about your financing, and if you're more comfortable with it as a way to do this, then it's also self.
And I will say, Justin, that I'm not opposed to the idea, and I kind of have working on a capital purchasing policy that would include a debt component in it that, kind of outlines a structure that, the guidelines as to what, we as a community think is prudent financial policy around these types of things. And I've collected a few from other communities to sort of reference so that, it is a policy, you still have to follow it. It doesn't have, it doesn't refuse something, but it's a guideline that you can adopt and then is also used for, for making the case to say we're not ready for the next borrowing, or this one should be done in cash because it meets this criteria. And it's also helpful when we go to get a bond rating to have that policy and show that we're following it and that we're making attempts to work within those guidelines and outlines themselves.
I wanted to ask about that because that's important to me. You said that something like this being in place will help with our bond rating. So what you just alluded to was a policy that the finance department would have in place, that bond rating agents can see that we've got a program established to replace our capital investment, to have an ongoing replacement, which to them is important. And I think that's important.
Right, and it doesn't, the one that I have a draft of right now has a borrowing component, but it does not say that it has to be borrowed. It just says we do this or this or this, and we don't exceed this amount of borrowing for these things. So it does limit it in the policy, but again, it's a policy that you wouldn't really forbid you from breaking it as much as it's a guideline for this council to pass on to the next, and to people like me to say, this is what we're comfortable with, and we don't really want to go beyond that. And, should have brought that first, possibly, but I don't really have it all together right now.
Well, I'll just weigh it. I mean, I certainly could support what you're talking about there, Melissa, but as you know, I've been troubled with this since it came up, and it's not anything to do with the two items. I think they're both very important, the ambulance and the dump truck. I guess what bothers me in the history, at least since we've been a city in this administration, we've never done this before. And to me, it's a little bit like a credit card where, you say you're going to open it and you're not going to make purchases, but the next year, is there another capital item that is expensive, and we say, well, we got 400, let's put another 200, and then suddenly it takes on a life of its own. I'm not saying, and I know what Councilor Rist is saying, that's up to the council and their oversight, but Councilor Rist is only 1 of 9, as he knows. Certainly looking at the numbers, and again, it would have to be up to the mayor to bring it forward, or in this case, unless Mike changes his mind, the new mayor, certainly the ambulance, to me, is well within reach of being funded, given what we have in the ambulance account. If we put the whole 40,000 free cash, and I know both public safety departments, we've had some staffing issues where we've had to supplement their budget, and hopefully we're not going to have to do certainly as much this year, you never know. So, again, I think the ambulance is certainly within reach.
Reach now, Dan, or?
Well, I'm just saying
Now or next fiscal year?
Well, in the next fiscal year, but early on in the fiscal year, we have 92,000 in the ambulance fund now. As I recall, 35,000 goes in July, at least, 30.
But actually, it won't.
Any reason? I mean, it always
It's
has.
in the budget. The plan.
So you're saying the ambulance
The
fund
plan
is,
is to eliminate the ambulance.
well, if we did it the way we used to, 30,000 would have went in. So that 30,000 somewhere, we would have 40,000 in free cash. And again, that would bring us up certainly within $100,000. Again, it's up to the mayor. I mean, I certainly don't have the authority to bring an appropriation. As far as the dump truck's concerned, I hear what Superintendent Pipchinsky's saying. I wholeheartedly agree we need one. We did put in several $1,000s in upgrades to his current thing. Hopefully, free cash may look better as the year goes on, and we can make that as a big capital purchase near the end of the year. I know he says there's a lead time of 9 months, which is kind of troubling. I didn't realize it's that long, but again, I think this is something, if nothing else, we should wait for, again, unless Mike changes his mind, for a new mayor to see if this is something they're interested in. I mean, it's a departure from the way things have done, and again, it's nothing to do with the items. I think they're very important items, and certainly something that if we could fund it in a different way, I would be supportive of. But I don't particularly like this borrowing for these capital type of improvements, and we've never had to do it before. So, any other comments by the council?
I think, and I've always felt this way, until it's proven to be wrong. And it's happened, we've had department heads that have done mistakes where I've lost trust, but very few. I'd like to trust Melissa on this, and we'll see what happens.
I mean,
I know that's not what you're talking about.
I'm just saying,
policy.
don't frame me as being against Melissa. I said I would support her thing on capital improvement. This has nothing to do with Melissa.
Yeah, but it's bonding.
It's to do with the way the city is spending its money, Dan. It's nothing to do with Melissa. I give her kudos for trying to bring something forward, but this is a whole new way of approaching it, of one that I'm not comfortable with. So I just say, don't characterize me as being against Melissa. That's all I'm saying. If you want to say it in general terms, but I don't want you to say.
Well, I am saying it in general terms, but it is her program. And if you're against the program, then you're against the policy she wants to institute. You may not be against her, but you're against the policy. And I'd like to support the policy that she wants to initiate. I am encouraged by the notion of bonding agencies looking at us putting a plan forward for capital investment and maintaining our large quantity of assets, which we have to do, and I think that's an important thing, and I'd like to try it. You need to know that I am perfectly, there's no way that this credit card's gonna be opened on I'm one vote, but it's a loud vote. I won't allow another bonding to happen until this is paid off and we see what happens. Because I agree with you, it is a departure. It is her policy. I know you're not against her because you think it's, but it is her policy and I like to support it, that's all. Okay, so we debated it.
I'm actually, I'm still conflicted. I'm actually, there's things here that, I wish we had a capitalization policy in front of us that would do it for me. I'm actually very comfortable with the mayor's suggestion on so say using the lease versus, say, borrow as a metric. As a metric here. In this case, it won't work in all types of things that we use for this type of purpose, but it works for this one, and it helps set the precedent for listening to define our policy a little bit. Okay, I'm going to let this go to the full council. Get a full debate. Let's see where it goes at this point. That's generally what I see.
So you're not going to vote? You're going to abstain from voting tonight?
No, I said I'd be ready to vote.
Oh, I thought you maybe wanted to find the council.
Do one of you gentlemen want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the, I don't know how to state it.
Recommend the council.
Recommend to the full council that the bonding borrowing program for the ambulance and the truck be adopted. Appropriation, supplemental appropriation.
I will second.
Okay, having a motion and a second, is there any further discussion?
The only thing I will say at this point is that I have not firmed up my vote when it comes to council. At this point.
Hearing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. It's 2-1.
This was it.
Aye on the opposed. Okay, 2-1, so I'll make a minority report, and you gentlemen can make a majority report.
You want to do that, Justin?
Because you're still conflicted.
On if there wasn't an ambulance, there was Sandra there, I don't know if I would vote. So that's where we're at.
I think it would be crucial that all of you come. That's this May, that's this Wednesday.
Yeah, because we already set the public hearing, because we knew that there was going to be a vote, so the public hearing is going to be held a week from today. So that's the time to be there. Okay. Thanks, boys.
I gotta get what your favorite song was.
Moving on to the budget, just a couple items before we get going. One, I will say, in phrasing this, I kind of like the new format. I did have a couple of quick questions before we get going on it, obviously.
More about salaries.
Well, that's one. I also, and I don't want just at the end, as you all know, I wasn't here this past, I was out of state, and so I didn't get this, and I know you gentlemen set this.
We sent it to public.
You set this, which I don't have a problem doing it. But generally, when we finish the 3 sections, we vote that evening. I would ask that at the end of tonight, we vote formally at the beginning of the next meeting, just in case I have any additional questions.
Okay, hasn't had enough time.
Because I've gone through it fairly well, but I don't know if there's anything, as I go through it, I'm going to need more time, as I said, because I only really had it about 3 or 4 days.
Do we want to set?
That's my other thing.
Or set now?
I wanted to set the final 7 sections. And I broke it up like this. I thought the next one, the days I had in mind is obviously our next subcommittee meeting will be May 22nd. Okay. If we could do May 21st and 22nd, I don't know if that Tuesday is good for everybody.
Fine. I'm fine in May for 21, 22, 28, 29. And
Is that
That's okay.
is that good with you, Mike, or Melissa?
So 21 at 6?
21 at 6, and then 22 at 6.
What are we doing?
And then, well, I spoke to the superintendent today because I know Andy comes in one day, and I would definitely want him here. It's Tuesday, so I was thinking next Tuesday we would do 3, which is the schools, 6, which is human services,
So that's, wait a minute, let me get
Oh,
it.
yep.
May
21st,
21 is section
3 education,
3, education.
section 6 human services,
We're gonna do them all in one night.
yep. Section 7 cultural and recreation, and section 10 community preservation.
Section 6, 7,
3, 6, 7, and 10.
I'd like to
Well, the only
lot
reason,
in one night when we have education.
okay, well, because the only other thing is,
$67 million.
is the other night, I just went back to our past, what we've put into it, because our other night would be public safety, public works, enterprise. Now, if you want to move one of those,
Well, you pick, these are all small. The human services, cultural, and rec, and CPA are all small.
that's why I put those with education.
Okay.
There are
never mind.
only a few departments in
Right.
those.
Section 6, 7, and what was the next?
3, 6, 7, and 10.
Okay.
So that's it.
Section 10 is CPA.
Right, that's very short. And
And then,
the other night, on the 22nd, we would do public safety, which is police, fire, ambulance, dispatchers. So the 2,
sections
2, 4, which is public work, which is also lengthy,
Okay,
and 5 enterprise.
I just write numbers down.
So 2, 4, and 5,
Okay, good.
okay, on the 22nd.
Joe, if he can be here.
Joe P.
Joe McCoy?
Joe.
Yeah.
Wanna go ask him?
Sure, ask him if he can make the 22nd.
And
I don't know.
the chief, if you can catch him too.
Yeah.
I'll email him. If there's a problem, we can always check. And then we can, hopefully we won't need another day. If we do, we have that whole next week.
Set it on the 22nd.
Right, we could set it on the 22nd, we have that. But I believe I'll have to set, and I'll wait for Dan to get back, I'll have to set the public's, I'll have to actually set the public hearing, I believe, next Wednesday, because that's our last council meeting before June 5th. Correct?
They both can make it, both of them are there, so they can both make
Okay.
it on the 22nd.
I was just saying, Dan, and I'll set the public hearing for June 5th, next Wednesday, because that's our last council meeting before. So
Why not?
if for some reason we need another date, we can, on the 22nd, we can decide whether we want to meet that week or the following week, because
We have an extra week.
We have an
The
extra
29th if we're not,
if we're not done, right.
but
Exactly.
we'll finish before.
Hopefully
the
we'll be
meeting.
finished, right. But I'll set the public hearing.
Okay,
Okay,
general government.
That said, since Joe, our vice president is here, Mr. McCoy, Councilor McCoy,
Yes.
I will not be in town for the June 5th meeting. And I know there'll be, my vacations are planned over a year in advance.
And you plan poorly, I see.
Yes, 2 years in a row.
I don't know if that's construed as poorly, but I think it's good.
But regardless, I know the finance committee may be looking for someone else to help them out also.
Oh, reading.
I know in the past we've had 3 readers, so I know I'll do one, and Dan, I'm sure will
Although I
do.
guess, we mentioned this last time, it's a little tougher running the meeting and reading.
Right, so if not, I can
We
ask,
could do,
we can
two
do,
of us can do them, I'm not.
if we need another, we could get something, because I know running the meeting and stuff, we can always get to one or the other.
If we need to, but I don't.
We like to read, we like to talk.
General.
We're 2 talkers. Okay,
We're just gonna read the motion.
Okay,
I think Barbara's gonna have all the motions.
Then just deleted all of the future finance committee.
Does that mean we don't have to have it?
Yeah, that means I won't be here.
We need a
My
second.
early
We have
retirement.
until January.
7 months, no.
7 months, 21 days.
I keep saying that unless
10 hours.
Mike changes his mind, we never
I
know.
know, it doesn't fall for it either.
Right, he doesn't fall for it, I keep
Sorry.
saying it, but he doesn't fall for it.
If you meant it, I might.
I don't think we should approve the council's budget until our salaries triple.
Well, look at him,
Oh yeah, that's never gonna happen.
I'm supporting this because Melissa made it.
Trying to get on our good side now, huh?
all humor aside, I will, as Melissa knows, I will echo the, and I want to say this so the mayor can hear this too. The new format that we're seeing here tonight is, actually, I think it worked very well. I'm glad to see it.
Yes.
And I did have the same similar question with the salaries being all over that. Melissa did answer my question by email,
Okay.
so I didn't have to ask that.
Pretty straightforward.
You can answer that in a second. And the other thing I need, if you could explain a little again to me what original and then adjusted means. In other words, original, I'm assuming what was originally asked for, and adjusted is what eventually was.
Adjusted includes all of your votes to add
Supplemental.
additional appropriations,
Supplemental
and
budget.
what's different from Mike's
What
budget
his budget is. Okay.
is that holdovers from the prior year that are open for availables this year
Right.
show up there.
Okay. That's what I
Showed
think.
up in that group 3. So spent or unspent. So they're available in the budget until they're closed out. So.
And on the salaries, again,
The
just.
salaries, I think that, well, we every year have Sue do a calculation to double check everyone's salary requests, and we generally go with her number. But I think that this year is a little harder for people because it's the first year that it was 52 weeks in a day. Last year was the first year we had done the exact year budget, but it just so happened it was exactly 52 weeks. This year it's 52 weeks and a Monday, and next year I think it's 52 weeks and a Tuesday, and then it'll go back to 50. That's how it kind of ebb and flow a bit.
Also, there are steps for some employees,
Some get.
others don't.
Yeah, right.
So we offered them a 1.5% increase that was granted January 1. That all shows up next year, only half of it showed up this year. And when you compare it, you're comparing it to the,
Well, he was saying that the requests were all,
different between the request and the recommended?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we always correct,
but I think that people might have had a harder
Yeah.
time with it because there were a few moving parts, and this is a little different. And this has to do with that whole thing where we asked for the appropriation to true up the actual working days. And so now we budget for, like, in my case, in my office, it's 52 weeks and Monday, June 30th. So.
Okay. I guess we'll start at the beginning.
And I wanted to cut this one, but I didn't.
I was gonna say that in the next one.
We have a 17.9% increase in expenses. Kind of runaway.
That's right.
Yeah, we went up to $75 in maintenance and service agreements. I don't know. It's a lot of money here.
And supplies.
I don't think we call that.
The 100% increase is on 166% increase in city council office supplies. We didn't have any last year.
And so in this case, the requested and the recommended are the same ones.
I will say that, I know Mike's being a little facetious, but some of our increases, I know Barbara talked, the cost of advertising every year goes up, so we had to add a little for advertising. And this is one of those years where the council may switch and there's a little bit of a,
Almost 18%, I don't know.
I hear you.
No one for us hired, so we can't afford the plaques. We need a budget for it.
They're not in it.
Looks like our total is only up 0.95%. Not purchased. Anything else on city council?
I had no.
Yeah. Okay,
This total's only up 0.86%.
moving on to the mayor. I noticed your food supply was up 100%.
Oh, okay.
That's
You know
because the next mayor's going to serve me crackers at the
At that inaugural, right.
I will say that this code, whatever it is, 5490, defaults to food service supply, and then I have to go in and change the name to whatever it is. So what is it? Like, I changed, some of them I caught, some of them I
Actually,
didn't.
that might be.
It might be food service?
I think there is this year, because I
Because
think
every 2 years we do that.
because of the election,
But
Yep,
in-
that's
in-
that is the name of it.
In the food, in the fire department, it's actually, there's something else that sometimes that's not really what it is. So if you catch those, sometimes they default to that.
The line item number might change.
Right.
The line item number might be the same, the description might
Description might change.
want to
Is the
change. Might
column-
want to change.
I understand.
Is the column actual for 1313 where it's zeroed out? What does that mean?
In order to run a report that didn't do 6 pages, it asked me to put in actual to date for this year. So I tricked the system into not putting actual because depending on which day I ran the report, the actual would be different. And I
Okay.
didn't want that number in the published.
Right, because
I
it
can
is-
run the report differently that doesn't include that line, but it will be 2 pages long for each department or not include the account number.
I didn't know what it was, it's okay. Now I do.
Yeah. That's, in period 13, there is no expense. That's what I picked it.
Councilor Scott, anything else on the mayoral budget?
I actually had, everything's pretty self-explanatory, and I really have no questions on this.
And the 1.98 increase you see in the
Radio, tele,
the 5113 line, and what's called clerical, it's really not clerical, but it's my administrative assistant. That is the standard that you'll see based on the fact that they got a 1.5 in January. So the whole year is actually, it adds to 2%.
so this, and now, again, without going into personalities, this would be someone who didn't get a step because they're probably at maximum, so that's would be the
Step
base,
will be like 4.
would be an extra if they're
And we'll run into one.
one that where they come in, gotcha.
And then the steps are based on anniversaries, and so they will be different for everyone.
Okay.
Someone who came in on June 2nd will have a different step and different amount of pay based on the step happening early in the year than someone who was hired in September or in January.
Right, like
The step
Joanne in
happens.
my office, hers is in late May, so when she gets a step, it's for a few weeks
Gotcha.
in the year that it happens.
You'll hardly
and then
see it in the year she gets it. You'll see it more in the following.
it- Right.
Anything else, Dan, Mayor? Justin? All good?
Try to keep everything pretty flat.
Moving on to licensing board.
Licensing board had a request for $6,000 that they believe that they want more clerical time, more time for a position. The person in this role is my assistant, and so she's available to answer license board questions anytime she's working. And so I didn't grant the increase that was requested, because they really don't need someone sitting waiting for questions. They have someone who's
that they can-
readily available who happens to be paid under the mayor's salary,
Right.
but it works out perfectly fine and everyone's served. I did add a little bit because, as you can see, the actual in 2012 was 2,600 as opposed to 2,500. They are planning on doing some changes with their regulations, and so they're going to be looking to bring in someone to help them write regulations, and I told them that, once they kind of develop that scope, I'll be happy to look at that and maybe make a supplemental appropriation based on the merits. So I think in future years, they're going to continue to look to increase their support.
Well, I was just gonna say that when I spoke to them, the way I compared it was like, Barbara works for your board and she gets a stipend for her board, but she also is available as part of her job. So the stipend job and the full-time day job are sort of interlocked, and that's how I feel about this position. The position isn't standalone; it's part of another department and has the full-time support of one of the staff people in the building, and that therefore, if you think of it in that way, we really can't afford. We don't have enough. I don't think in the licensing to staff an office for just that alone, and if you think about it, if you don't want it to stand alone, you want it to be incorporated as part of another job with additional meeting responsibilities.
Makes sense.
Just a brief one, Mike, and just entertain me on this one, please. I know they say education training, they got $200 plus, I see you reduced it.
Well, it's still
What
higher than
education training
than
and
there are several statewide meetings that are sponsored by either the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission, ABCC, the state agency, or there is an association, that's what the dues are for, that they belong to. It's an association of licensed commissions. And so they travel. Sometimes there's a fee to go to the meeting, to attend. And so that line, the education and training piece, is tied to if they're, if it's $25 a member or it's $50 a member to go, then there's some money available for the members to go to these things. And they've had 2 of the 3 members attend these.
Good.
Okay.
Can I ask a question on the mayor that I forgot to ask, because I was typing? Mayor Tosnick, as I recall, you received, position of mayor received an increase. Was it 2008 that it went up from 66 to 70? Do you remember when that was
I
actually
think
voted
it
in?
would have been, this is we're in fiscal 13. I think you voted it in 9 and it went into effect in 11 or 10. No, you voted in 8 and went into effect in calendar year 10.
What I'm trying
And
to
I didn't take it until
You didn't
now.
take it. I wanted to make it clear that although it was approved for 3 fiscal years, he didn't take it.
Right, I know he took less. Well,
He took
he
less
took
than
some.
the
He took-
70 that he was allowed.
Well, you can see
less than the 70 that he got,
300
because of the reduction,
You can see in 11 it was
because of the
66.
reduction of
12 it was 68. Yeah, I tried to take the
Take
same
your
sort of
hit,
hit
too.
that the staff took.
Thank you. Just wanted to make sure that we understood where that was.
Well, the fire union decided that that was some reason to to convince the JLMC to give them a raise, is because the mayor got
because you got
a raise. I haven't had a chance to testify to tell them why the mayor actually took a pay cut,
rid of it.
and the union didn't. I'll get a chance to do that testimony someday.
Moving on to the auditor.
Thanks for noticing. Auditor, there's really no changes in the budget. There's some minor dollar changes, but not significant. In this case, both of those employees are at max.
Okay. And again, that's at 1.98 or 2%.
Again, it's the education training. I can see why they want to do this. You haven't seen this for so many years, and all of a sudden I'm seeing that there seems to be an interest.
Well, I can tell you, Valerie, one, she's very involved in her organization, and she's actually, she teaches the classes there, so she does have her, and in order to keep her certification, does have a requirement to go to those classes, and we both, every other year now, this will be the second year we're hoping to go in July, if our budget's approved, go to KDS training, which is the accounting system we use, and she's made a lot of changes to our account structure, and we're learning how to use this better, and that's part of what this book is it comes straight from our accounting system, so I don't have to create a separate spreadsheet for you guys. Took me a couple tries. It'll be better next year.
You hit it on the nose when you said in the past. As new people come to work, their desire to keep up their skill sets are different.
Is the assistant, the administrative assistant here, is
The assistant on
are they going? Is there certification that she's required to have?
I don't know that, I don't know if assistant auditors can get a certification. I know that treasurers can if they want to, the assistants can. I did that program when I was an assistant. I don't believe that Sue is pursuing that right now.
Okay.
And I know Joanne in my office is not, but they're also much closer to retirement.
You can also note that there was an adjustment within the budget to free up some of that extra money for education training out of office supplies.
Yeah, I did notice that.
And so the department made an effort to try to figure out how it can better spend its own
I
resources.
noticed on licensing office supply. I think it was one. Maybe it wasn't.
Okay.
Well, I was going to comment that she's new, the auditor, since the last budget.
Now, it wasn't an objection to the amount of money. It was just trying to get an explanation. I've been, Mike knows this, and even Melissa, we've been trying to support education training over the last decade.
Councilor McCoy, you have any questions? But feel free, at any time when you have one, to just.
You guys negotiate the audit along with your auditor, so this is the amount of the contract for the coming year.
This is for like scanning or
Scan the outside auditor, yes.
No questions, good deal. Anything on the outside auditors? No. Okay, moving on
Telephone
to
expenses are still consolidated. This is a department that's actually operated out of the personnel department. But these are the consolidated costs for most all of the actually all of the voice telecommunications. There are some leased telephone lines that are covered in DPW budgets, but the phones that you would normally call for any of the departments are not.
What was the holdover, there's like a holdover, 1,500, is that, what did that result from?
Yeah, the
Last phone bill of the
the
year.
last phone bill of the year that doesn't
I
come
see,
in
that's
until after the
until
books.
after the book.
So it's in the first warrant, or with the first warrant in the new year. And so you see a holdover in 11, you see a holdover in 12, there'll be a holdover in 13 to pay in 14.
Justin, anything? Dan? Okay, moving on to assessors.
Well, the big change in assessors is the professional and technical services line. This is the year of the reval. And so we actually have gone 4 years. It's normally a 3-year, it's a triennial revaluation, but the DOR wanted to level out the work statewide, and they had like 1 year very heavy, 2 years very light, so they kind of reshuffled everyone. So now their workload year to year is very common. And so they put us all on new 3-year schedules. Easthampton was one of the communities that actually ended up waiting 4 years to get into a slot. But that was at the direction of the Department of Revenue, so we didn't do a this will be the quadrannual or whatever. But after this, it'll be back to 3 years.
That could be a pain and blessing.
No, it's
The 4 year.
every year you do
Could be
an
missing out on
adjustment.
tax money.
Well, every year you do an adjustment. I mean, the assessors internally look at sales from the prior year and do a categoric adjustment if there's been a reduction in selling price or an increase in selling price. For single-family ranch homes, there's a code for single-family ranch homes, and so that code gets affected by an adjustment factor, up or down, every year. And then in the triennial, we bring in an outside agency, and it's a closer look.
We have to use an outside agency.
You don't have to do that. There was actually a request from the department to consider using in-house staff and add time to their schedule. I wasn't comfortable moving that forward, quite frankly, based on valuations that we've had to abate. And you recall there was a $250,000 adjustment to our, to cover our deficits.
I agree, but also from the point of view of having a
Well, it's
check
nice
and
having
balance.
somebody
If we
else's
can
eyes.
afford some of their eyes, like having the outside audit, it's the same thing. You need somebody else's eyes on it. And this is everybody's taxes, and it kind of protects us. It's not an in-house taxation where they might complain that the administration is tying the hands of the assessors or something. Having an outside agency every 3 years is very important.
I agree.
So that's the real increase here.
Do you recall, Mike, and again, it doesn't go back 4 years, is this about what we paid, or is there a little increase? I mean, again, I don't know what the service, how much that has gone up or
It's
down.
probably gotten up a
To
little.
be quite honest, over the years, we've spent as much as $90,000 to do it, and as little as 50 or 55. And the variation really is in who gets hired, and that the level of professional assistance has varied based on who the principal assessor and the makeup of the board have been from cycle to cycle. And so it really is kind of dependent upon what the appointed board feels comfortable with. I believe that a lot of the data entry, clerical sort of activity that comes associated with that is actually going to be done by our staff. So they were able to drive the price down.
Can be down.
Exactly. The outside consultant comes in, he's doing the work, he's maybe using the systems here, but any corrections that are noted, that sort of thing, that's likely going to be data input by us, not by the outside consultant. And in some instances, I can recall when we only had 2 people in that department, and we didn't have the capacity to do the data entry. We also did have the capacity to do the measure lists that we needed to. So the staffing level is now at an appropriate level, and they do have a little bit of capacity.
The other question I have is in the salary items, looking at the part-time clerical. To me, it looks like we added hours, and that still doesn't explain.
Well, the added hours were in the 13 budget.
Right.
Right.
And then, but for that level of salary, the increase that's being recommended, there's a piece missing. I don't quite understand it based on steps and adjustments.
Yeah, there's nothing special about that.
No increase in
Going from
hours,
17.7 to
it's
19.9.
no increase in
Yeah,
grade or
it's-
level, or?
It's no increase in grade, I'm sure there's a step, and she may be early in the year for a step, this individual. But the hours are not changing for that position.
It's about 13.
Just double checking mine.
Longevity.
Well, longevity is in separate lines. We can double check the numbers.
The idea is, I agree with the possibility that, like, we're looking at 2012, that would be like 2 weeks worth of salary, that case, we're here, we're looking at a full year of increase. I don't know that, I can't tell that, it seems like it's a substantial jump.
So that's still a, I forgot, is she a $20 hour? I don't recall. She's part-time, that's Kim's, this is Kim's position. So Kim works there and she works part-time in the inspection office. I don't recall exactly what the hours were. The hours haven't changed, that position doesn't stay stagnant. So we can get back to you on what
Can you
the,
please?
I suspect it's a timing issue, but.
Mark's getting a step because he's gone to 4.4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both of the other two staff, Mark and Connie, are both eligible for step increases. And Kim is as well.
Okay, so that might be an explanation, it's a step increase.
Yeah, and I'd have to look in 13 to see when we up the hours in that department too, whether we up the hours in the beginning of the budget cycle or whether it was later in. I just don't recall, I apologize. Can you follow up on it?
Yeah, I am, but when did the person change? Who's new to that department also?
Yeah, that could also be, it could also be, well, we'll find out, but it could also be that the person who was in the department was at a lower grade.
Kim's been with the
than-
city a long time, but she's moved departments.
And so it could be that it was an S5 grade 3, and that person left, and Kim moved into the job, and she's an S5 grade 6 or 7, so she's already, and we don't bring people.
At a higher step.
She's already, same grade,
But
but if that person moves jobs, we don't lower their steps. They stay in the same grade. We had an employee go from a grade 6 job to a grade 5 job. They stayed at the same step, but they had to drop a grade when they changed to the grade 5 job. But if we have a grade 5 employee that moves to another grade 5 job, that employee stays in their step.
So if they were on step 2, or the old,
If the old
step 2 and they were on
step
step
2,
4, they got
There's
an
3% in each step. So it would be fairly easy for steps to make up
that difference.
a difference just in a change in personnel. But Melissa can follow up on that and give you the details.
Not an
Thank you. You know that's on tape.
Any other?
That's
Anything
the only
else on
question I have.
assessors?
No,
Dan?
I'm okay.
On to the treasurer.
Yeah, I thought about cutting this budget right to nothing.
We don't need her.
What's that 1.98%? Is it?
But since it came in less than the current adjusted budget for 13, I figured I'd leave it alone.
Did we reduce her salary?
Here you, as you mentioned earlier, the increase in educational training is what you were talking about earlier. There's the increase in in-state travel that I see.
Yeah, well, when I go to classes, I put in more travel. I took it from professional services. I do need some money in there because that's how we pay. I have some contracts for financial advice for ongoing debt reporting and basically reevaluating debt that maybe we could refinance and get a better rate on, and then even a short borrow, there is some administrative cost too. And then I do pay some banking fees that are starting to creep back in with the interest rates so low, you can only ask them to give you so much.
Justin, anything else? And that's presenting an interesting enigma because we're out here in Western Mass, where we want the highest training possible, but we got to pay extra for it because travel.
Do you know what's funny is that I'm part of a new association since I've been here called the MGFOA, and it is a bummer that all of their classes tend to be in Boston, but they don't charge anything for their classes. Like they have one annual meeting that they charge like $25 for. All the rest of the classes are free, but I have to get to Waltham, Needham, whatever, and so and that's a bummer. But I have to say that those classes tend to be better than the ones that are locally, and the ones locally I got to pay $40 for anyway.
I'd rather have, this that enigma of pushing to have skilled appointed positions.
The other factor here in this particular office is that the finance director is going to be taking over as the certified procurement officer. And so Melissa's been going to training and will continue to go to training to maintain a level of certification as a chief procurement, as a municipal procurement officer, because quite frankly, I doubt that the next mayor is going. I am certified, and I don't see a mayor normally getting to that level or desiring to have those particular skill sets. And so, part of the transition is to make sure that those skill sets are in. Are you running for mayor?
No.
Well, then you won't be one with those skill sets either. And so, in order to get to in order to make sure that those skill sets exist in the community, in the next administration, Melissa's getting certified. You're currently going. You were there today, right?
Is she, is it typical for the finance directors in this kind of arrangements in cities and towns to be the procurement officer?
It's typical for someone in the involved with finances in the administration to be the chief.
Let me be more clear. Is it in her job description to be that person and she hasn't had to do it because you were doing it?
I don't recall.
I think it's actually in the charter that the mayor shall be.
Yeah, the mayor shall be, but the mayor can delegate. And so the decision was to look at where the mayor
How much of
delegate.
I'm going to ask, how much of a workload increase is this?
I think you actually do all the POs and stuff, and it's a lot.
It will be eventually, and that'll be something that I think a mayor will have to look at. Right now, when there's no burden other than training on Melissa.
Right, but I mean, once you're gone and we have a new mayor who's not certified,
There'll be a level of responsibility. Now, we have lots of people that understand procurement in Easthampton, just not any that are trained high enough to be able to advise the mayor, or to allow the mayor to appoint as the chief procurement officer. So,
Okay.
for example, Department of Public Works writes all their own bids.
Right. But you have
Generally
signatures.
speaking,
You
the
still
planning-
have to be the signature.
And generally, the planning department writes their own procurements. And so there's a need to review those, and that review requirement will fall to the mayor under the charter, and the mayor's going to have to look at someone to be able to provide that sort of expertise to them. And so we're setting up Melissa's position to do that.
But the future mayor will still have to sign the procurement.
The future mayor
Because the
by
charter
charter
requires
is the chief procurement officer. State law, and I'm not sure about the charter, allows that responsibility to be delegated.
Okay.
Any chief procurement officer in Massachusetts is allowed by state law to delegate that role.
Okay.
And so I could have, and to be quite honest, I think when I was on my honeymoon I did, to someone other than the council president. Because at the time, it was the council president was the acting mayor, but you wouldn't expect in this council president as you would, well, you might know, but this council president didn't have a sense about what public procurement meant, and so I couldn't let that role fall to that person as acting mayor, so I forgot. I didn't even steward the time.
How long a process is it? I mean, to be,
Well, last year I went to one 3-day class, and then you take a test at the end. So this week I'm at a 3-day class. You take a test at the end of that, and then next month there's a third one. And then that allows you to apply for certification. And basically what that means is, we told you all the stuff, be smart enough to look it up. I think is really, and don't get in trouble. And now we can hold you accountable. I think that's what
And to maintain the certification,
You have to
there's a
go-
certain expectation
you keep-
for CEUs, educational credits. And some of them will come from the association activity that Melissa's already involved in. Others she'll have to reach out and go to other trainings. There's some online trainings available. And so there'll be a need to continue to,
There's like 5 people in my class this week that aren't there because they need the recertifications. So they just went.
and so it's basic, and then it's kind of basic procurement law. That was the first one you went to.
This is construction and design.
Yeah, and then there's goods and services, and then you've got all 3 of the kind of big nodes for procurement. And there's a lot of specialty stuff. Public construction there's a whole course if you wanted to do contractor at risk procurement as opposed to chapter 149. They get even deeper into that.
Right. They just kind of gloss it over, but they're going over 149 in depth this week. And then there's a whole other course just on school buildings. There's a whole other course, a whole bunch of different stuff. If there's something coming up in your community that
there you go.
And so again, part of that transition.
Anything else, Justin?
Nope.
Dan?
I think that's where we should be putting that.
Anything else on the treasurer? We good?
What are all these pages coming up, your budget preparation report?
Well, they all say budget preparation report. The next one's computer.
Oh, I guess I missed.
that's the name of
Oh,
the
I
report.
see where it's listed, okay.
On the left hand. Got it. Next is computer. So the big increase in the staff there is, if you recall, we added a 10-hour position last year, but it wasn't funded until September. And actually, we didn't hire it until, I think, November. And so the difference between last year's original and this year's is just funding for the full year as opposed to a part of it. Ed probably, he would also be qualified for an anniversary step.
Do we give you a miscellaneous professional and technical services?
Yeah, that's all software. But I'll double check my document because I labeled it different.
Softwares and licenses? Or?
Yeah. Without being on a second. Software licensing.
All right, I'm gonna just change that, because that's what it's always been, right?
What
And,
line are you looking at?
and software licensing
5319.
moved from 67 to 72,000.
Yeah.
And that's, you're gonna be seeing more and more of that. Well, no, we won't. But software licensing is just the nature of the beast. We're now running out of our Microsoft licensing because we've gone to new versions. And so he's gonna have to buy more software licensing just for us to keep up. Like 2013, Windows, Office 2013 is coming out. Now, we have the grant-funded operations in the health department going for that training now, using their grant funds, but eventually we're gonna end up, rolling into that. We're at 2010 now, so we're pretty happy that all of us got to 2010. But whenever you change, you've really got to upgrade your licensing. And Barry's conscientious about making sure that if you've got 60 people using the software, you license.
Are you running Windows 7?
He's actually running, he's got a server part.
Oh, a server runs.
Yeah, we're all based on the server. I think I have Windows 7 on my PC, but pretty much everything we do is server based.
The only reason we needed postage this year, $25. We've never had that before, I just wondered why.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know, you know.
He
obviously-
ships stuff, and I don't know
I mean, I'm
where,
surprised he didn't use it.
don't know where he pays, you know.
I'm surprised he never needed it before, I'm just, all of a sudden it appeared. That's the good part of Melissa's new thing, you see the 100%, I said, what's this 100%? And then I looked over, it's $25.
We did reduce the education and training a bit. As you can see, he's not utilized that heavily. With Ed here now, though, he's got a little bit more free time. The problem with one-man shops is not only are you at the mercy of that one person if they're available and if they don't get sick or heaven forbid something worse happens, but it also prohibits him from being out for any kind of length of time because he's got demands here, and if he's out trying to get certified, trying to get training, and he's got to try to do that on a work day, it's nearly impossible for him. So Ed's going to help free up a little bit of time. So I left a reasonable amount in there, even though I did cut it.
Anything else on computers?
Nope.
About computer capital purchase,
Yeah, there.
looks like all zeros.
You haven't bought anything?
Only one comment, and that's, this is again one of those things where you gotta look at it like Blue Schools. We should develop a program of replacing the capital hit so that the technology doesn't get ahead of us. Every 5 years,
Maybe that's what Melissa wants.
that doesn't plug it.
No, I think
With any luck, being able to do a little
I
bonding
could
will
support
free up cash for a
Well,
little
you support bonding for new computers?
No, I said I support capital account.
Tax collector,
Tax collector.
relatively level funded expenses, changes in personnel are steps.
Well, she has this miscellaneous equipment increase, but that's not,
And the bottom line stays a little bit less than current budget.
You keep trying to talk her out of cutting yourself, but you won't. But I think some of that is she, in her budget, operates postage machine, not separate from her postage, she pays the contract on the postage machine.
okay.
That's,
That's
Anything else on collector?
Nope.
City attorney,
Well, dude, no change. Really?
like 10,000 from 11, is that just
Well,
the
yeah.
nature of more,
11 was a quiet year.
I mean, that was just because there was less legal
I
activity.
think we told city council they couldn't talk to the attorney that year or something. It's cyclical, it really depends, honest, it
On
depends
issues
on
that
what's
come
going on. This year it was really quiet until we got to the DPW land taking stuff. And so now Jacksonville, he got busy with the Stop and Shop case.
Right.
For a while there was nothing going on, it was sitting waiting for a court.
Right, and
That's
then you get
So
some
it's
starting
cyclical.
curve.
We found, and I think in 2011, we probably had 27 or 28,000 appropriate. But of course, what doesn't get spent frequently, it's returned. Because we've consistently been 25 to 29,000.
And you supplement when you have to.
If you have to.
That's why it's up 37.
Jack's really a good value for our purposes. And the fact that I've had so much experience helps. I don't have to pick the phone all the time. I think you may see this creep up a little just if you have someone in the office who maybe isn't as familiar with some of the things that go on and may need legal advice more often than I might.
Anything else on city attorney?
We pay for his, do we give him subscriptions? What's the periodical?
Those books are updated on a regular basis, so those law books, those green law books are always current.
They have that package.
Right, and so that's what this is.
Do you, he probably has a set of his own, I assume.
I presume he does.
Do you use them?
I use them all the time.
Okay.
Well, that was
Actually, a lot of us use them.
A lot of it's online.
Well, you can read the legislation online, but you can't read
Some of
these.
the, have the
These
cases,
have case information in them,
which is
Case
important.
decision information.
No, Dan, what it has, it'll give you a blurb of, like, say a case that has been decided that.
Yeah, it gives you a lot
Like,
of.
kind of like will show you, like if it's the issue you're talking about, it might have a case that was.
You can buy that service online. So we could go to Tom, I think this is Thomas's. We can go to this company and we can get an online subscription instead. But it means that people who wouldn't normally have to use it would have to have an online subscription if they wanted to use it once or twice. And so having the books here, it's relatively inexpensive, and it gives you current law all the time. It's really been invaluable for me. I
We
presume.
can see which segment of the law is heavier. Ben,
Oh, yeah, you could definitely see which ones have been used.
I think it's just an inexpensive shelf. And maybe we should take the books off and turn the shelves over so they'll go level again.
Justin?
I had none on that one.
And to be honest, being fully insured keeps our legal costs way down as well. We have a lot of legal action related to insurable events that we don't pay anything. We were just in front of NCAD. We got the decision today regarding an employee who filed a claim. And the insurance company pays all of that. We have to pay a deductible when it's all said and done, but in communities who self-insure, their legal costs are phenomenally higher than ours.
On to the personnel department.
The only question I had on this one
You
was
got
the jump in personnel services,
That's,
professional services.
Professional services is the fire department.
It's labor.
Yeah,
Labor.
it's-
Labor.
There's the negotiators, but you recall all of the 111F injury stuff that we've had going on in fire and in police, and so we've actually hired, and you see the $12,000 in the current budget. We've actually hired a company to manage that with the personnel department and the chiefs. And so there's a monthly fee associated with that, and that's what this is.
That's not just.
So that was started in, the negotiators in the next budget. So that was started in this current budget. So that's why you see the 12. So it's really an increase in this budget from 12 to 15. That 400% increase, I think,
it's from the
compares to the original. When we started the year, we only had $3,000. That's the basic. Lisa has a need to talk to a personnel attorney, and that's paid for in that line.
Just like.
So that $3,000 is basically her access to, currently she's using Ed Mitnick, her access to an attorney to ask questions about the specific things that she has to deal with as a personnel director. She needs a special, Jack knows personnel law, but Ed's a specialist. So that's already in the budget. But the annual cost, we started mid-year, the annual cost for this service to the fire department, I believe, is the $12,000.
And it needs fire and,
I believe so.
Which one?
fire and police, it's, they.
Right, I know that, because I remember Is this something eventually, hopefully will go away?
I would think
Or at least
that-
be reduced
I would
in the
think,
future?
well,
I said hopefully, I didn't.
I don't know.
I will say that it's a contract to sort of keep them online. And, you know, we had several years.
I know we just had a few bad years.
Bad years, and in order to sort of move people either back to, you know, to, they're being encouraged one way or the other. And so I think that, yeah, if you don't have anybody out, then maybe you don't need that anymore, but then if it comes back, then you're starting that process all over again. I think the contract, you know, the people who have on the other end of the contract think that it's an ongoing service for, you know, that these type of injuries happen and to resolve them as quickly as possible.
Anything else on personnel? Okay.
Negotiating, this is where. So what do we have up this year?
Well, we currently are in binding arbitration with fire, and the next hearing is in September. And we're in mediation with police, and I believe our next mediation session is sometime late this month.
And that's
And we are coming to the end of the second year of no contract with fire, and we don't have an active contract with police this year, if I recall. So we'll be coming up on the first anniversary of no contract for police, and we're coming up on the second anniversary of no contract with fire.
When did you say the binding on fire was?
The next hearing for the binding arbitration, it's a JLMC hearing, is in September.
Nothing saying that's going to settle.
I'm sorry?
Nothing saying that will be settled on that date.
Oh,
That's
no,
just the
we
hearing.
had one hearing, it went much longer than I think any of us expected. The union had 2 witnesses and it took all day. The city has 2 witnesses, so if we take all day, it may take another session.
Anything else on negotiators? Justin? City clerk?
Longevity increases because of length of service.
Does that go to Barbara?
Both.
Both of them?
Both employees get longevity.
Okay. I talked about.
And one's obviously hitting a plateau after
In-state
after one.
So are they both at top steps now?
Yeah.
So they're already back
Anything else on the clerk? You said you talked to her on the in-state. I know she has.
Yeah,
She's in the
she's
association.
very much involved in the association.
More involved in the
To be quite honest, over the last 2 years, we've throttled back, and she's paid some of those costs on her own. And so we're starting to return some of what we, lots of places got cut when we were cutting budgets. We're starting to try to return a little bit of that as it goes. And so this does, I don't think this fully meets what you requested, but it's getting closer.
Anything else? Elections and registration.
We expect to have a November election, I presume.
Yeah,
That's what this is.
what I marked up on this one was, of course, the increase in the line item 5249 was pretty self-explanatory until we get in here. But the 5219, because it says professional technical services, is that more than just someone who certifies the machines?
I don't think so. Which one? Again, I'm sorry.
5319, is that what you're talking
Yeah, 5319.
That's almost, pretty sure that is, almost exclusively.
For that purpose?
Yeah.
Just want to make sure.
So does that cost more for each election? Do they have to come in certified after each election?
Yeah,
I would assume after a primary.
program in for each election, and I think she said, do you recall the meeting? I think she said that they were going up. In some years, she can get some of the work done if there's a state election. Some of the routine testing that has to be done annually can be sort of charged on the state side. In years when we have an election, there are usually no others.
It's a little off the thing, but I know Barbara talked that hopefully the state will fund those 2 elections, those special elections, but we've
Haven't
heard
seen any
nothing
of that
still,
yet.
right? I mean, so we've heard nothing on that.
Conservation Commission
Conservation Commission,
reduced.
That looked like she switched money to, from in-state travel to more of a
You know,
stipend.
I think that's the way she requested it, and I don't think I changed it. But Mayor, you put it back down in travel, right? I might not have moved it.
I may have left it where that was requested as well.
we're talking this.
Yeah, looks like.
Yeah, I left it where it was requested as well.
I was like, oh.
So that 1,200 was paying for like a $100 stipend to Kelly.
And still is.
And I think we were calling it travel, but this may be more appropriate.
And this for when she has to go out.
She's the agent, for lack of a better term. She's not really an agent, but she's the staffer. She serves as, when the developer calls or a homeowner calls.
She's
She says, I
got a
need you to look at this.
She knows
on one of those.
So we changed the in-state travel to a stipend.
The problem is, in the past, we've done salary studies on this and vote on this. I don't know if that has any impact on charter. Again, or ordinance?
Not a position.
Not a position.
She's an appointed member. She has no other role except she's the chair. And so on behalf of a commission, she does this. We're just, I think what this effort was is to recognize that Moore is paying for the time, not, because it wasn't like she put in mileage for $1,200. It's $100 flat. That's what the board voted, and it's certainly not onerous.
A lot of the positions, this type of stipend comes out of an ordinance requirement, not just on like this.
Pay plan? What you talking about?
People employee, no. You have an ordinance that says that members in certain committees and whatever get certain amount of money.
I don't recall it, so. I have a problem with this.
The charter does allows you to set the stipends for multiple member bodies.
Right.
This is not a stipend to a multiple member body. This is payment to an individual who happens to serve on that body to be their staff for pennies on the dollar. You want to argue with this, you're welcome to, but
Professional services. It's like professional services,
Titanic.
right? It's just like professional services.
I mean, we could
The commission can
go and
hire.
hire somebody at $100 an hour to do that work.
I don't have a problem with it, just that. It's just- You wanna clean it up.
No, I know when we discussed it, this is one of the boards that we tried to do something like this for. It was, you know,
You mean to increase it or to add a salary?
to increase the stipend. I don't know what that means in terms of payroll.
There is no stipend for this work.
You know, when we looked at it a few years ago, we looked at every board to see if we could increase or add a stipend.
Again, this
That's not the board. She works for the board.
had nothing to do with her attending meetings. This has nothing to do with her attending meetings. She does field work for the board.
Okay.
The board needs a field person. They just issued a cease and desist order against the largest developer in town. Someone has to do that work.
Who was that?
That was Bernie Gall.
Bernie Gall? How would that get?
You didn't see we all got a notice on it.
I didn't see it.
You should have gotten an email.
Really? We got one?
So anyway, I think I understand what you're saying, but this isn't that.
Okay.
And if we'd left it in trouble,
So the travel goes away and, you know, it doesn't really change anything. Okay.
Anything else?
Conservation is gone.
well, we've gotten the best opinion I've heard on this one, because I was under the impression that the funds that are retained by the Conservation Commission under law were subject to appropriation if they were going to be used for budget purposes. And Melissa's clarified that it's not. So we don't need to approve whatever they want to spend. This used to be offset by an account, because that's the account that the money goes into, but it's not subject to appropriation. So they can spend it at their will. Vote of the Concom expends the money.
The money they get in from
They
development.
get a portion of the fees, right?
It's a revolving account like a lot of
It's not taxpayer money, it's money.
It's applicant. So if the fee's 100, the Conservation Commission gets 50 or whatever, and the state gets the other balance. And that money is by law segregated into an account.
If
So-
they choose to appropriate some of those funds for different
They
purposes.
just write a PO.
The chief procurement officer.
If it's over $5,000, it has hoops, but other than that, it's pretty easy.
Anything else? City planner.
The change here, the obvious change here is the 5118 line. Go through the others. The planner salary, that's just the part-time, the 5115 line is the assistant planner. Actually, more of that person's position is being picked up by the CPA and less by the general fund, and so that
So she's
reduction,
not getting a reduction in salary because it's a CBA fund.
it's he,
I'm sorry.
that's Jay. And anyway, so those positions haven't changed, although the numbers change a little. That's still, I believe, a 20-hour position or a 21-hour position, that's the assistant.
So you get benefits.
But more of it is being covered by the appropriation that you're going to see in CPA section, the 7,500, than in years past. We're not asking for more money. Whatever. I'm not going.
That's their game.
And we won't be here to worry about it.
Yeah.
What is new though is the third line there for 12,000. We have for as long as I can recall have had bookkeeping grants administrative positions in the planning department that were funded through our community development block grant programs. This year, we received a $2.7 million mill redevelopment grant, but we didn't receive any CDBG grants. And so this is Susan, if you've met her, Susan Kenya. This is Susan's position. And in order to be able to administer any significant grant, like that $2.7 million grant that we got for the mills, we need this position to be in place. And so the general fund is going to have to pick it up this year. I don't know that,
Previously funded by grants.
right, and I don't know if that's going to be permanent. If we get a block grant, then her salary can be picked up by the block grant for the work she does on the block grant. Until the mill grant is finished, there will be a component that is a responsibility of the general fund, because you can't use a block grant funded position to do non-block grant work. We have applied for another block grant, the second phase of the work we were doing in the neighborhood off of Everett Street. That Great Street, Everett Street area where we're building the neighborhood there. So we've applied for the second phase. We've applied for about a $900,000 grant for 3 or 4 different items, including that. We don't know if we're going to get that or not. We won't know until after the year starts. So this could be, a portion of this could be offset if we get a block grant this year.
It's money well spent. We have to have someone there.
There's nothing in the mill grant that you can pay any of hers on?
No grant won't be
Because it's just not in there to,
Yeah, they don't allow administrative
I see no
charge.
administrative charges.
CDBG does allow administrative charges, but it's specific to their grants, so only stuff that, they're funding. So the unfortunate thing is a lot of these grants come without administration anymore, so you have to be able to support the people in order to apply for and then manage the grant you receive.
Well, on the other side then, if she can't administer this grant and there's no block grants, I guess, what do we
Well,
pay?
she can administer.
That's,
This is.
Oh, I'm saying, you're saying she's gonna administer the,
The 2.7.
7, but
Plus-
we,
Plus whatever else. we're
right,
on,
no, so, but we have to pick it up because it's not, I understand.
Right, and so.
I was thinking that they had their own person administer it or something, but we still have to administer it and pay for it.
Right, so the department head is Jessica, and she does the contracting work. She's, for lack of a different term, driving the bus. But someone has to keep the paper going and make sure that we get the reports and we track the data and we do all the follow-up. Because the granting agencies want to see that in order to give you a grant again. And so our track record is really as important as our grant application. How well we performed is weighed very heavily when anybody gives us a grant. When I got here, we happened to be blackballed for block grants because we administered them so poorly. It took us a couple of 3 years, I think, to get a block grant, and we've been pretty successful since then. And so this really is part of the, you may have read, and maybe you didn't, but you may have read Amherst is going through a pretty difficult time. They used to be an entitlement community, or what's called a mini entitlement. And so they had a lot of positions that were service positions for grant activities and community support activities that were funded by this entitlement grant. Now, the nature of an entitlement grant is that you get a formula amount every year. You're not in competition for it. You get it. You know you're going to get 600,000 or 700 or whatever the number is. They just lost that status. And so their town meeting is scrambling with how do they backfill next year's positions that were funded by their entitlement grant. And so their numbers are much bigger because as an entitlement community, they had a larger operation. We are what's called the CDF1 community, Community Development Fund 1 community. We used to be a CDF2 community. The difference is that CDF2 it can apply for grants every other year. CDF1 is presumed to have higher needs and can apply every year, but the competition's much stiffer. So we used to be pretty much a shoe-in for CDF2 grants, and now we're in stiff competition for CDF1 grants. And we didn't get a CDF1 grant this year.
And I think that whole program is becoming smaller. I mean, every
sequestration and the federal government.
This was one that, where I didn't have time to go back, because I remember when I saw this, I know we hired the assistant planner recently last year. Before, did we have two people and one went somewhere else? I was trying, didn't have time to go back.
When Stuart was still here, so in the recent past,
Right.
we had a planner, we had a grants coordinator, Ellen, we had a grants bookkeeper, three different ones, and we had this same position. So there were four
Right, I remember
at one time.
And we had a clerical staff.
Oh yeah, and there was a clerical staff position. So 2 years ago, I think, we eliminated the clerical staff position, changed out the grants administrator position to a part, and took a one full-time higher grade grants position and one clerical level position, created the assistant planner and the ECA coordinator. So we still kept the two positions that were city funded, we just changed them significantly. So the assistant planner does some clerical work, the ECA coordinator does a portion of the work that Ellen used to do involving the arts. And that's really an economic development piece for us. And so the number of positions hadn't changed that the city supported, we just changed what the positions were.
Right, that's right, that's kind of where I
And
went.
if I recall, it was relatively revenue neutral.
Just an informational question. Since the descriptions are part-time permanent on both of these, but you got, let's say the 5-1-5 and 5-1-8. Is there any reason for doing it that way?
Well, I do it that way to keep track of who they are. I hate burying positions. We have a couple of budgets where positions are buried in lines, and if you don't really know that there's the
You
nature
can tell
of
by the size of the salary.
And so the 5118 line, if I recall, in the chart of accounts, is a slightly different description than the 5115 line. Here it's there.
This is abbreviated description, I understand that. But I don't know what the difference is.
Well, in this case, besides the fact that there are two different positions, there isn't any difference in
How they define.
they're both part-time.
Yeah, I think, I don't know that it
No, it's fine, it's an easy way
matters.
to track it.
But like, if you put them all in one, then you have to be like, well, this isn't even 20 hours for Susan. I don't know what it breaks out to be honest with you. And then Ben is, you know what I mean? Like, they're just, she's partially funded from something else.
What I'm getting at is this, I understand these are abbreviated descriptions, and I'm okay with separating them out, that's the issue, I don't understand.
So the pieces that are missing is that the last word in the 5115 line is regular as opposed to other, and I think we've done that because
in the past, if we have.
because the regular line is more administration staff, the other is kind of a specialty position, and that's why we've used that different account number.
that in.
If it were my druthers, I think I'd have a separate line for every employee, but
That's Sue's only job, or she has that one?
that's it.
That's her.
And I believe, I'm fairly certain it's less than 20 minutes. No,
No, because when all the other positions went away, she absorbed all the hours. But
that
support-
clearly is not.
Yeah, that support is not, she still has some.
I think that's 10 hours. If you'd like more detail, we can develop it for you.
No, that's, I understand.
So that's one of the few places where there was actually some people growth here in the budget, although not growth in the number of people actually working here. There's a couple of those instances. As grants dry up, we're being asked to pick up some slack.
Anything else at this time? Okay. To
All right,
Arts.
the city arts, this is, when we talked about Ellen's position, we called her the grants coordinator. But she had a lot to do with establishing the Easthampton City Arts organization here, mostly because she's an artist and she was sort of driven that way. When she left and Stuart had the opportunity to rearrange the operation to implement the assistant planner's position, to provide more support for the planning process, we still needed this arts activity, and so we hired Burns. Maxie, you may know her, and Burns has been paid partially from general fund reserves and partially from grants and partially from, she's full-time employee, and partially from proceeds from the Bear Fest, from the arts activities, the donation monies that go into revolving account, that sort of thing. It was an Adams grant that initially created the position, and the Adams grant is from the same people that gave us the Cultural District and Mass Cultural Council. They have continued to fund us, but they're asking us to pick up more of the cost as we move forward. And given that they've just designated the Cultural Council, they really were expecting us to pick up this position, and we've said we'll pick up a little bit more of it. So we're picking up another $5,000. The request for 37 is the position salary.
That's how much she is getting paid.
She earns that.
But she's.
And she earns that, well, for example, in the current year, there was 20 available to support her position. And next year, there'll be 25 available to support her position. The balance of that position will continue to come from Adams grant monies and from the revolving account, the Bear Fest monies. But this is an effort to show good faith to the Mass Cultural Council. The position is invaluable for economic development in Easthampton.
I see, to be honest with you, what I was worried about this one was creep, that we're gonna eventually be paying the full salary.
We will.
Somebody will spend money.
Wow.
I don't want to get documented.
So just so you have a sense of it, and I don't know what the next mayor is going to do. Our focus on redevelopment of the downtown has been the arts. They have been the engine driving economic activity in all of the old mills. They are the engine driving the vitality of downtown, in particular Cottage. No other cluster in Easthampton has done as good as the arts cluster. No other cluster is as big as the arts cluster when you look at employers, small employers. There are no large factories coming in, so our focus needs to be somewhere. It works here. It works very well here. Contrary to what one of your members said, there is culture in Easthampton. And we've been pretty successful. All of you have been around here long enough to remember Cottage Street when it wasn't as nice as a place you could call a cultural district. That's had a lot to do with the arts. and a lot to do with our focus on parents. I do expect that we will be paying the ECA coordinator position out of the general fund in its entirety at some point in the future. This year, I'm asking him to pay $25,000.
Is there any increase in her salary? In other words,
She's treated as, she's a pay plan employee.
that's what I'm saying. In other words, when we add it all up, no matter where the funding comes from, it's what was her increase? Is it, I mean, she get more than?
1.5.
She's classified as a pay plan employee.
So
she
get
got whatever the pay
cost
plan.
of living and a step or whatever.
And yeah, and I'm sure she's not at max. I don't think we hired her at the high end of her scale, so she probably gets a step.
But there's nothing additional in the salary. In other words, we didn't give her an extra stipend of,
No,
just that we're not getting as much.
we're not using as much of other, Bearfest money's going away. I mean, the donations have stopped, and so that money is eventually gonna run out. The Adams Grant wants to pay less for it. That's their concept is, look, we'll show you how you can use this position to support job growth and commerce in the arts. We asked and they said, great. But as we show you and as it does that work, you need to take it on. And we agree, and we've told them that we would. Again, they asked us to take the whole thing on, and we said, no, we can't afford to do that. But we can pick up a piece, and so I don't want to say negotiated it, but I essentially got back to Jessica and said, we can do 5 more. And that's what I would ask for. So that's what's
So 9.
Well, 20 to 25. The 4,000 in expenses were run out.
You took the 4.
Oh, you took the 4 out of there, I got you. Okay, I didn't see that.
So there's a total of 20 appropriated this year. We're asking for a total of 25 next year.
I got you. Right here at the bottom.
I'm not objecting, I'm just expressing concern about the creep.
I know how it's right.
Because even the 16, what we're hearing now is a slightly different story than when it first came out, when we awarded the 16. So it's gonna come, so the idea is it shouldn't come as an unknown in the years future. That's all.
And again, I can't speak for the next mayor. Another mayor may come in and say, this art stuff isn't worth supporting and back that position down or want to. Well, and I don't think it would
She
make
could
any
say it.
sense.
He could say it. She
You got
could
that
say
kind
it.
of authority?
I have a voice. Loud one.
Can we go back, Mike, to the city planner? There was a question I had, and I forgot to ask it. Did the planner ask for more money? And it doesn't seem like she asked for any more money in advertising. And this year, we ran into, I know Barbara ran into the fact with me that there's been a couple of hearings, city council ordinance, planning board joint hearings. And the planner was, or the assistant planner, I think, went to Barbara with, we don't have any money for advertising, so we were kind of picking it up out of our.
And I think you still are.
Right, and I'm saying, didn't she ask for any more? I mean, that's.
You see what she asked?
No, that's what I'm saying. I guess my question is, why? I mean, I
She should have asked for more.
She should have asked for more in there. I mean, I don't know if,
I'll tell you that you can see that she cut herself the tiniest bit because she knew what she was asking for. And she submitted this budget, the ECA plus budget, and a couple others, and she tried desperately to find a way to not ask for so much more.
No,
I'll tell you I think that's what she did. She was like, well, if I only advertise our meetings, then it's only this.
right. The only trouble is, again, in this year it kind of came up with Barbara, and I certainly went along, and Barbara went along with us funding it, but I'm not sure we should have to fund more than half of those. That's why should the city council have to fund more than half of those
All
advertising?
the same.
All the same money.
Well, it's all the same money.
Taxpayers' money. It's an ordinance that you're doing a hearing on.
I agree with you, Mike, but kiddingly, at the beginning, you asked about the city council budget. In other words, ours has gone up because of advertising, and again, we have our own. Well, Dan, you poo-poo everything, but I'm just making a point of, our advertising went up. We had to ask for more advertising, I guess, why doesn't the planner ask for more? And I was just making.
It's cyclical too, but
I was making that
depending on what the ordinances are that we have to deal with, and if more money is necessary, she can ask for a supplemental.
Well, I guess that's what I'm gonna maybe request she does, rather than us paying for it, or at least half it. Again, I know it's small money, but in the, maybe there won't be many hearings. Again, if it came as no surprise, it wouldn't be an issue for me, but it was an issue that came up during the year. I didn't have a problem during the year, and that's, I guess, what the whole purpose of a budget is. If you have a problem the past year, rectify it in the current year, and that's where we're at.
And you asked for an increase.
We asked for an increase, and I guess I'm asking why, if the planner said maybe she's not
Trying
here.
to hold down the other costs of the budgets. I think that's what they're saying, so I understand. And maybe we'll get lucky and we won't have other ordinances. And
Obviously,
she can ask for more money.
Right.
Council can refuse to pay it, but
Okay, I'm just bringing it
I
up.
don't have a problem with it.
I know you don't, Peter,
Well,
but
it's
maybe I do.
ordinances, well.
You know, we can have a difference of opinion, Dan. You know, you're not always right. You know, I know you,
No, I know.
I know you kind of come like that from that angle, but you're not always the only opinion. You know, there could be two opinions on an issue.
Never said that, I don't.
I didn't say you said it. Well, I'm glad. I'm just saying you always seem to say like you're the only road someone can go down. I have every right to ask the mayor this. This is our whole overview of a budget.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure, and if she'd have asked, I likely would have tried to figure out a way to add 50 or 75 bucks or whatever that number would have been. In my mind, though, it's kind of small money, and there's money in reserves to cover that.
Mhm.
I think for this.
I agree with you, but again, city council's small money too, you know, and when you only have small money for advertising, you know. Again, I don't want to overspend our budget, we try to ask for what we need. Again, it's not a big argument with me, I just thought I'd bring it up. Moving on, hazardous waste collection, we have 0. Are we having any in the near future? I know Stuart wants to kind of
No one has any interest in
running it.
any of that stuff. There's very little interest in recycling programs. We are still doing some of the stuff that we've had set up, composting and that sort of thing. They just, Stuart really drove a lot of this in conjunction with the health department. Then we have a new health agent who's not had time to come up to speed on it. We have a new planner who's been busy with other things, and they just don't, no one sees the opportunity, the capacity in the coming year. Hopefully it'll pick up in the year after.
That's up to the
Not sure what.
Is it- Most of the remaining I actually had no questions on.
Recycling?
So the recycling is the cost of moving materials. This is actually a DPW budget these days. We took it out of the planning department.
But it's back.
No, it's 1724 is now managed by the DPW office. We didn't change the account number. We have a handicap awareness committee. They don't ever spend any money. They ask for money every year. We give them a little bit to have if they need it. They spent 42 in 11. Planning board is asking to level funding. That's where your advertising would probably, the increase probably would have come from, not the planner's budget.
Okay, it is from the
Just so you have a sense of that. But they asked for what they asked for. They run a pretty frugal ship. There are no funds for the master plan. That's completed. There's no plans to implement anything new. PVP assessments is new in the budget. You've seen it before in a different way. But Melissa's probably complied with the law better than I did. And instead of having it as an offset for receipts, which is the way we've always carried it, it now has a department and a request. So the numbers you see, the 2407 for 13 and nothing prior to that, there really was appropriation prior to that. And in my budget, I plugged it in, and it was the same amount, I think, in the prior 2 years.
Right.
Because that doesn't change. 2407.95 in both 12 and 13, and the same amount being requested in 14. And this is an assessment based on a cost per person based on the census population. So the number doesn't change except when the census number changes.
Right. And the reason I requested is I didn't have their report, and so I didn't know if it was gonna go up, so I rounded up.
And what did you appropriate out of? Do you remember?
It used to be an offset.
Offset.
So it used to be in the
in
revenue
section.
budget.
Used to be in section 11. It would show up as part of the offset, and it would show up as coming off the revenue, so the total budget was lower.
Dan? Justin? Zoning board?
I forget, wasn't there gonna be a master plan implementation committee? Did that fall apart?
There is a committee. They haven't asked for any funding beyond whatever funding is available to them from the planner.
This one on the zoning board, I was wondering where the percent calculations are.
I don't,
I also chuckle when I see the minus 100 run, that's all right.
you know what, it's going from the original, and there's no change. The original to the, recommended is no change.
Level funded, basically. I don't know if that's appropriate to say, but it's from one budget year to the next from the mayor's.
Yeah, 1325 was in the past budgets. 1325 is in this one proposal. It's actually higher than they had asked for, but they made an error in their request. In the clerical support.
So in the percent, when the percentage is 0, it just doesn't show.
Planning economic development.
The request was for the $400. This is actually local works. And so the 20, you may recall that last year there was an initial request for about $12,000, if I remember it. And I couldn't justify the ask, so we asked for the 26, and you approved it. And that was enough to get them to the point now where they were able to get the things they wanted to get done completed. They have a bit more work to do that will fall into next year, and that's what this 400 is for.
Justin? Dan?
So what was the 26? I'm not understanding. Why did they have 26 originally? And why did they not?
Local Works is a subcommittee of the EDIC.
Okay.
And they're the ones who you may have seen on Facebook or saw some stuff in some businesses. They have a flyer out now. They're trying to encourage people to buy locally. And it's
That's what the money.
so they use the monies, the advertising, the printing and postage. In this year's budget, there's an online survey they developed. The survey monkey, I think that was in the newspaper, if I remember. Or somehow it got out in paper form as well. I don't really recall it. Might have been a mailing. And they've been doing outreach to businesses. There's some stickers starting to show up on windows. And so that's a sort of a subgroup of the EDIC. The Development Industrial Commission could play a larger role, but they need to fill that, whatever shoe they want to fill. What they're doing now that has the cost is this local works activity, and we're funding it. If they had other activity, to be quite honest, I think the Easthampton City Arts Initiative sort of started there and moved out onto its own. They haven't picked up anything new beyond local works. If they do, then the next mayor will be able to talk to them about how to fund it.
Justin?
The next budget is the building ops budget, and there's a longer story in this budget, but we are going to be taking over all of the operating costs of the senior center. And so you'll see when we get into human services that
You mentioned it in your budget.
although the senior center is relatively level funded, the real change you'll see is a pretty significant reduction in expense money, because we've taken all of the heat, power, and building maintenance out of that budget and are going to absorb it in this budget. So that's the big story. Smaller stories. the wage increase, as you can, there's two 40-hour positions in this budget.
Okay.
Got it figured out because of the longevity pay. The longevity really is because of a change in personnel.
That was because there were two people.
Well, Dennis came over here with a lot of service
Okay.
from dispatch, and then I think Jerry's at a plateau now too. I think he might be at a 10-year plateau. And so the 100 that we've seen is because we had one guy at 100, I think he went to 2 now, and the other guy nothing, because he was relatively new. That employee went to work for the school department last year, and the vacancy was taken by a seasoned employee, Dennis Lapine, who was head of dispatch. And so Dennis left that position, that was a grade 6 position, to come to work in this position, which is, I think, is a grade 5. And
But his longevity.
he moved in step down to this position, but longevity doesn't care about grade. And so he went from a grade 6 to a grade 5, he took a grade 5 job, kept his, wherever his step is, he kept the steps, but he also kept his longevity. He's been here for 20 years.
And the car allowance is used because they travel between buildings? Or?
Yeah, the head custodian travels between buildings. He travels to Springfield. He uses his vehicle on a pretty regular basis. And he's notorious. In the past, he would do that and would not submit mileage. And so we implemented the car allowance.
Miscellaneous is professional.
In the middle of, I'm sorry.
The miscellaneous technical and professional services.
Yep.
Who's that?
Well, that is elevator repair, elevator maintenance.
Yeah.
And again, so some of those flyer increases are because we're pulling the elevator maintenance that was in the COA budget over to here.
Yeah.
Boiler maintenance is being pulled over to here. Sprinkler maintenance is being pulled over to here. And so all of the building operations stuff that existed, and we're doing it at a fairly modest change in budget.
Yeah. Okay.
And so part of what we're doing is recognizing some savings from the current operation in a couple of places.
Yeah, because you're only going up 6,000,
Yeah.
7,000, 6,000 overall.
And we're taking about 20,000 out of the budget or something,
Of the other
something close to that.
So it's really a reduction in overall, I think. Okay. I have no other
And
questions.
the reasoning, just so you're in the sense of it, is that we still haven't found quite the right transition piece, but not that I have a huge depth of knowledge, but I do serve as the kind of the maintenance director for the public buildings. I don't know what we're going to do in the future, but whatever we do, it really needs to be holistic. So this budget now is responsible for the town hall, the senior center, this building, and the safety complex. And those are the 4 public buildings that are eventually going to need some crew chief. Because although we've got good help, they're not high-paid help. There's a senior custodian who we give a lot of responsibility to, but he's a grade 6. I mean, a building operations guy, would be at a grade 10 or 11, I'm guessing, maybe better. And I don't know for sure, I'm still looking at what the options are for that. And Jerry was actually asking about that the other day, because I'm somewhat concerned about what happens when I'm not at the other end of the phone. And so I had a conversation with Pete Roy, who's our maintenance director of the school department. I may begin a conversation with the superintendent to see if there's any way for us to buy those services down, but we haven't made any allowances for any of that at this point.
The second page of this, that one.
This one.
Thought it was well explained by the mayor. Manhattan Rail Trail.
So we began funding some of the maintenance activities on the Manhan Rail Trail in the current budget, so last year at this time. That was a new appropriation. Barbara indicates that they probably spend in the vicinity of $7,000 or $8,000, if I recall the conversation. We've asked her to begin to track that so that we'll have real numbers, and the we part of spending is the Friends and the donation accounts. And so the Manhan Rail Trail Committee is looking for the city to take on a little bit more of the role. We took an $1,800 portion of that last year, and I've agreed to add another $900 to that.
Who does that maintenance? DPW personnel? Or?
No, they pay. There's one individual in particular that they pay on occasion, but a lot of it's volunteer, and they pay for materials and signage, that sort of thing.
So it's volunteer labor, but mostly material.
There's one individual they pay labor to.
Yeah, because I think they tried to get a program together where, like, you know, people were responsible for certain sections and stuff wasn't getting done, so they do pay mowing along the
You can
road.
get Burger King to advertise every 5 miles or so.
Well, they'd love to advertise. It's actually coming out and doing the work. And mowing is not easy because, you know, it's not easy to move mowing machines, that sort of thing. The rail trail has their own mowing machine. And so now, instead of waiting for someone to volunteer to push it, they have someone who comes out.
They hire someone to
They hire
use their machine to do it.
I know this was one I had a concern with last year because the rail trail was, they said they were going to maintain it themselves. And as I said last year, that once it gets in government, and maybe it goes back a little to our bonding, you start getting the creep, and here's the 50% creep. And again, you know, I'm not against the rail trail, but I know this is how government, kind of, to me in my own mind, perpetuates itself.
I saw this as, there have been a number of times when the rail trail has actually generated income for the city in the sale of surplus property, and it went back into the general fund. I see this as payback.
No, again, I'm not poo-pooing the rail trail. I think it's a good option. I guess it's just these things come into government, and it comes in as, it's not going to cost anything to the city because we're going to maintain it, we're going to provide it, and then slowly, you know, it creeps, it gets in, and now it's, you know, again, I'm just making another comment. So.
And I don't know where this will go, because I don't know what the attitude of the next mayor will be, because the mayor obviously sets it. I'm not uncomfortable with it, so, you know, I see a lot of value. I don't think that we could operate, you know, right now, there is no public agency responsible for the rail trail. So the rail trail is a piece of property that the mayor's responsible for, because no other department, it's not under the auspices of any other department, so it ends up in the mayor's. Now, clearly the mayor doesn't have staff to be able to do that, so I love the fact that there's a volunteer group that, you know, for a few $1,000s are still willing to continue to keep it clean and signs up and repaint it and all of that stuff. So it's in my mind, we couldn't do this anywhere cheaper than the way it's being done. But I don't disagree that it's, that I've decided that it's okay to ask for more public money to help support it.
Isn't it? Would it be under Park and Rec eventually?
It could be under Park and Rec or DPW.
Take
Those
it
are
a
the two
recreation.
logical, well, the two logical places to put it would be the Park and Recreation or Public Works. Now, I've talked to both. Park and Rec is likely the right place to put it here in Easthampton, but John says he can't.
Well, I know
manage
they
it without
can't
staff.
actually do staffing on it, but from the point of view of who would oversee it rather than the mayor's office.
Well, to be quite honest, I don't have anything to do with it. I let the committee, and they do a wonderful job.
But
Oh, that's
the
fine.
truth is, it is city-owned property, and if they were to just disappear, we would have to take it out
Right.
Or abandoned.
or sell it off.
No, well,
Sell it back to the railroad.
we could stop maintaining it and let it go. I believe you've all.
I love it. That's a good one, Chuck. That's a great one. Put a quarter in there, you can't use
Water and the
the
gate
rail
goes
trail.
up or
A
something.
little gate every.
What's the matter, Joe? You lost your... Oh, boy.
So, it is pretty I don't disagree. And I asked for an additional $900.
I agree.
You know, before you leave town, Mike, or leave the mayor's office anywhere, you need to give me the formula for how you do the enterprise fund assessments. I'll never understand.
Melissa did.
Is it a logarithm?
No, it's not. It's a little complicated.
It's a little complicated.
At some point, I may want to know.
But I can follow math and everything. What it is that's pretty straightforward to me. But it's the 0.5 on the end there. So where did that 0.5 or that 0.1 come from?
Well, that's what
And
I
I
mean.
kind of see
Where
if
do you
I
get
can
that
follow that to the 0.1 is with the percentage and the 0.5 is with the ratios. And then, but I don't know
Well,
where
the
that.
0.5 is like we're splitting it, like, okay, this is the total assessment, half of it goes to sewer, half of it goes to water.
Okay, I got you.
So instead of, there's a lot of ways you could do this. You could carve these things up so that it's based on the portion of funds. The water is about 60% or 55% of the sewer, so you could do, 1/3, 2/3.
And we did that
In some
on some of them.
places, if it's appropriate, we've done that. In many places, we just say, the auditor doesn't really matter. There's POs from both sides, just split.
I think over the years, the actual percentages that they're using in ratio 1 and 2.
They change your years.
Change based on the budget and how much they are in the
Right.
budget.
And if you look at personnel, the last of these, it's apportioned more like the people. As you can see, it's .338 in charge for water and .662 in charge for sewer. It's because we counted the number of people. And that's the ratio. So in that instance, it's pretty easy to understand that if you're churning 12 people here and 5 people there, that, you're going to take more time to churn 12 than 5.
What I look at it as is that here's a formula that's been used throughout time. The real issue is when this suddenly changes, that's when that's a real serious question. So I watch the ratios. And I can calculate it on myself.
So last year's total, just so it's not on here, last year's total was $75,575.30. And the increase is
And the charts are no longer in color.
You have to buy me a color printer. And I didn't do as many.
Where did you print them before, Mike, when they were in color?
in my room.
You have a color printer. You wouldn't let her use your printer?
I didn't ask.
Welcome to it.
It's not at
But
work.
but
So it's a gift to you, all wrapped in a bow.
if you look at last year's budget, I
Yeah.
think you will find color charts.
No, you
No, I
don't
don't think
find
they were
them, they're more on a 3D display versus the.
I think you find black and white. The only printer we have.
Black and white last year.
Yeah, okay.
The only printer we have that'll print that'll punch the holes is the copier, which is black and white. So my budgets were black and white as well. Except I would usually print the mayor's message on my printer and punch it by hand. So there was some color. That's right. Color was too expensive.
Are we done with this?
I think we're done with,
Done with that next
Section
meeting?
one, we wanted to wait, because to vote down.
We'll go next meeting.
next meeting, we'll go for 1, 8, and 9. Let's go on to 8, so we can get things moving on.
Oh, man.
Well, this is Mel's, and so I'm gonna shut up.
Let's see how long that lasts now.
Okay. Well, I mean.
General fund,
The debt is the debt. There is a little difference here because our system takes, exactly our calculations, and what I asked for is, how much we're actually gonna pay, but the MWPAT, which is a program that we do a lot of our water, sewer, water management and sewer construction with, has this weird formula where it's a 2% loan plus administration and less a subsidy. And so in order to do the accounting in such a way that it actually looks like we paid the debt down versus that, we only paid $10,000 when really we paid $12,000, but $2,000 was a gift from this subsidy program. Valerie does this journal entry where she shows the subsidy as revenue and increases the expense. And so there's a little difference in those ones from the way you've seen it in the past, but it's really so that on our books at the end of the year, it shows that we've actually reduced the debt by the amount we borrowed, because with these subsidies, we don't physically pay back the full debt amount. So that's why you see that there, so that's why I put these MWPAT subsidy, the part in the top of this.
So where would we see these numbers? Combined with something? Or?
Nope, they're they show at the bottom as on the 59999. They like, so there's a subsidy of 68,210, and there's a payment
Oh,
of
that's, I
60.
got it.
Okay,
I'm sorry,
and so
yeah.
that's, when I ask for the appropriation, I just net that out because it doesn't affect anything, and that's the way it's always been shown. But we do have to do this manipulation in order to get our books to show that we actually reduced the debt by that 68,000, even though we didn't actually make the payment and we didn't actually receive the money. So that's a little different for this part.
So, like, even though it doesn't show anything for this year, when you do the
When we actually do the journal entry to.
adjusted budget, it'll show up.
Yeah.
We always pay, for the most part, the same principal, and just using the high school as an example. And then the reduction is the interest per year, right?
Generally, yeah.
Generally municipal bonds are level principal payments.
All the time.
You can do them other ways, but in general, they're mostly.
But the savings is in the interest
Yeah.
as principal reduced. So the interest, well, I'm looking ahead, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. As soon as the interest is up, I don't know why. Is that because
Well,
of the new debt that's on here?
If you look at, oh, I'm sorry.
Well, there's the new debt that I asked for the high school. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the short-term borrowing.
Where is that?
There's like 2,000% increase or something like that for,
Oh, yeah, 2081.
because I borrowed this week
Short-term
for
borrowing.
the rest of, the high school. And that's what I asked for. And I asked for the money for the truck and the ambulance.
I saw that.
Could not cover.
I saw
So new borrowing raises the interest. Is that a proper statement?
So
Yeah,
that was
but-
my question on these was only what happens if the ambulance and the truck do not pass?
Well, it wasn't.
6 months later, the next mayor can ask you for whatever.
Yeah, you can ask for additional.
So does it affect your?
Is it in here? Did you
It's
put
in
the
here.
appropriation?
No, it's not, the appropriation's not in here.
It was a $20,000 request that I did not fund.
Well, so if we passed it, the borrowing would not be in, we'd have to do a
Yeah.
supplemental to.
No, to be quite honest, if you passed it, you're authorizing debt.
I got it.
You're not authorizing any budget.
To pay for that.
You're just authorizing debt.
Right.
The lead time for these things is going to mean that we aren't going to need the money for 6 to 9 months.
I gotcha. Okay, so you don't have
And
to
then
put it
you
in the
would,
budget.
and
I
then,
got it.
so I got the debt, so let's just use 9 months. If you say in May that, yes, you can borrow, and we're going to go out and order a truck, then in February, we'll get the truck, or January. That's when we pay for it. That's when Melissa needs to borrow the money. You gave her that authorization to borrow the money. Not when she needs to pay it back. She'd make a payment maybe in 6 months or a year. Well, that'll roll into
The next,
into
FY15.
FY15.
15 is when we're gonna start seeing.
And then more than likely, the mayor will not do that. The mayor may say, I want you to appropriate something out of free cash. So it won't actually have to be in the 15 budget, it can be appropriated from free cash. But those are decisions that'll be made once the debt is incurred. And we won't incur any debt until we buy something.
Right.
And so when you order it, you don't have to pay for it. They trust us. We'll give them a PO, they will build it.
The full faith and credit of Easthampton.
Exactly. And so then that puts the whole funding decision off that many more months, and it gives a lot of time for the next mayor and for the finance director to kind of look at it. Okay, well, we're going to have a $195,000 ambulance coming in let's say that's 6 months, in November. Great, got to borrow the money in November. Well, free cash is there too. So it might be that the mayor, and I don't believe that I am going to give you any capital appropriations. I won't sign an oath to that, or or swear to it.
Because you
but
don't know when emergency comes up.
You never know. But I don't intend to drive next year's capital program any further than getting the departments to get things in order and getting all that information to Melissa. I'll work on that. That process, the decision-making process generally happens in January. So that's really the next mayor's responsibility. And that is good. That'll be when the mayor will know for sure, and Melissa will know for sure, what did that ambulance cost? You know, was the defibrillator really $35,000, or was it $34,200? And did we get a trade of the old one, and was that trade $2,000 or $2,200, or whatever? And so there's still real numbers to borrow, and because you don't want to borrow what you don't need. It's hard to get rid of it, especially if it's a debt exclusion, and it makes it a real pain.
Well, what I had on was actually, this is part of the chart I had a question.
Sure.
On these two here, most of it's pretty straightforward, but I put the same note out there because I'm always hopeful. And every year I ask the same question. Every year I can get the answer. Is things that come off the
I can
chart.
tell you anything, right?
Because I don't remember what you said last year.
See that?
Is there any?
Yeah, but now it's on tape.
So what you want to do is look at what was 0 in either 11 or 12 to see what came off. And so, to give you an example, just not that it was reduction, because I don't think anything came off in this budget. Yeah, actually, in 12 there was Echoville for 50,000, and then in 13 it didn't happen. But that was CPA funding, so that really doesn't make any difference to the bottom line. Echoville was a CPA project. But you would see that for any of the others. There is no debt eliminated from 13 to 14.
There's debt reduction.
Well, sure. There'll certainly be reductions in interest payments.
An interest. What here is, on the bottom of this page, you talked about amounts we paid for debt exclusion.
I think he's on the chart.
The chart page. Where was that derived from?
Some of these borrowings are dead liquid. There's public safety building. One of the payments of the public safety building is excluded, and 50 Payson. The high school is completely debt excluded.
What I'm getting at, I see a number, but I can't figure out how to do math.
Oh, you won't. No, let me pick it up. So last year you saw it here.
Yep.
I took it right off the debt in the summaries. This year it's showing up here, and I think it shows up in the same place. It's a portion of the overborrowing that happened when we refinanced.
Oh, you mean the payback?
Yeah, right down the bottom here, it's this little $5,000.
Yeah.
That little note.
Oh, that's when we refinanced. This is not the overborrowing. When we refinanced, we got what's called a premium,
The money we make.
and they gave us up front, and the law says that I have to allocate that premium over the course of the loan, so the full 20 years, to reduce the amount of interest every year.
Okay, so we received, in this case, maybe $100,000 in premium, but over the length of the loan, we're taking that same number.
Yeah, it's actually two of them,
Okay,
so one of them runs out quicker than the other.
Okay.
One's 2,000 and one's
I actually think I understand that.
which two were they?
There's a refinance on the public safety and the 50 Payson Avenue building, I think, and that's where the smaller one of them is, and then there's another one on the high school itself. We received a premium when we borrowed for the high school.
What does it mean to receive a premium?
The market actually pays you because you put your stuff up. They give you money up front. They may charge more interest later in the deal somewhere. But to make your net cost more attractive, they pay you money up front. So you bid, I'll use numbers. You bid 2%, you bid 2.1%, but you're cheaper. Because you gave me a premium that was more than the 1% difference. And so we awarded to you even though the rate's higher. Because you were willing to give up money today
Front.
for more money down the road some other time. And maybe that made
It's almost a
marketing sense.
reversal of points on a mortgage. So
Yeah, sort of. I mean, sort of. I think that's a fair way to say it.
in the reverse.
Okay.
And I think that's why they make you take
I
over
like
the
it
life
when
of
the
the
sections
loan
are
because
all
that you're,
These are the better
it's in
sections.
fact, basically you,
Getting tired of that.
you receive
We
the
don't got-
interest credit.
I think
on
that
it.
This next one should go
219.39. We get on the screen.
Is that what it says? You can read it.
219.
Oh, yeah, it says 40.
So,
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, did you want to go to the next section?
Yeah, we all set with that?
I'm good. That was-
And you didn't want to vote on any of this, right?
So 9 is pretty short, 2 years.
Yeah, well, 9 is, you're used to this, and this isn't, there's nothing really new here. So the first is contributor retirement. That we're on a funding scale, it's a 4.5% increase funding, moving forward. It actually nets out a little bit higher than that when we actually have to pay it, so you can see it's a little over 5%. That's a required payment, it's based on our schedules. It's affected every time we make a decision, because everything we decide to do has an impact on our long-range cost, and we're trying to pay down what right now is about a, if I recall the number, about a $19 million unfunded liability.
Oh, yeah, I see the water and sewer went down.
Well, water and sewer, it's all set by the,
Employees are-
I'm not even sure, gotta look at mine, 'cause,
Flipped up to 4%.
actually, wastewater went up, water went down, and sewer went down, but wastewater went up.
Yeah.
A part of that is, again, the PAIR Act gives us these numbers, and so we don't generate these on our own. But a part of it is there was a lot of churn in those departments, and we have a lot of new employees who are at a lower pay grade. And so when you look at amortizing their cost over time, they're lower money now. As their wage increases, they'll be more costly retirees. But right now, the actuarial says they're young people. They're in their 20s. You know, you've got 40 years people or 32 years before they're going to retire. They don't cost as much. Wastewater, I think, on the other hand, we ended up with some, in comparison, some longer-term employees.
Yep.
But these numbers are all generated by PAIR Act, and we're simply required by law to pay them. So that's a chunk of increase that will come all the time. We don't have control of that. It's $100,000+ a year. That's just the way it goes.
Workman's comp is just a, I see this.
We're insured.
This is an insurance payment.
Yeah.
Right, I see it continuing
It's
going
not
up because
self-insurance.
there are more people pulling it. or-
Payroll, it's based, workers' comp is, in the industry, is based as a percentage of payroll, depending on how your people are classified. So anytime people get raises, the cost of the insurance against that higher wage goes up, because it's all percentage driven.
It's 60% of a wage.
Yeah, it's whatever percentage, and depending on what you do, like clerical, it's the rate per $1,000 of wages in clerical is maybe 2%. A truck driver might be 8%.
Skyrise worker.
Sure, depending on the danger of the
risk assessment.
occupation, you pay a premium that's a percentage of the wages that you pay, and it's always audited. And so the following year, they come back after January and they say, okay, I want to see all the payroll for all your people, and and they'll separate it based on how we're classified. And sometimes we've actually gone through that classifications over time and made sure that people were appropriately classified. Because misclassifying can either cost you more or save you money you shouldn't be saving. Hopefully you only find problems that cost you more. And so we've been told to expect a 5 or 6% increase, and so it's been allocated at 5.9.
How come the Medicare tax doesn't go up?
It does.
It does.
It does, I didn't,
We just don't fund it until you know?
I was okay this year, so far, and I should probably look at it this month to see where we are with it.
But if you've given people raises,
Same deal, it's
Should go up.
1.45.
1.45%.
But it's also heavily affected by overtime, so if overtime is less than last year, then it goes down. If
So
outside
you're level
detail
funded,
is
okay.
over,
I
more
got
than last year, it goes up. So we were okay when he asked for that, so I was like, well, I'll just leave it there. And I may regret that next week when I look at it.
so at the end of the year, if you have a lot of overtime and you need to pay more Medicare tax, you'll come with supplemental. But because you don't know, you're level funding it just to have something, a base to work from. Yeah, okay, got it. Good enough.
Anything else on Medicare, Justin?
Thirty-two
32B.
Now, there is no rate increase, but still we're going up 3%. And that really is simply a part and parcel of, we own people's health insurance until they die. And so when people retire, they don't go away. Our portion drops from 75% to 50%, but we continue to pay. So this will always be affected by two things, even if the rate doesn't change. One is churn, simply people choosing different plans, coming on when they might have been covered by someone else, new employee coming on with a family plan, the one that left was on a single, however. And by the fact that retirees continue to be covered by insurance, and their replacements are also covered by insurance. And so that's why this will never go backwards. We've been lucky, extremely lucky. And we still need to fix the insurance problems we have here. Because they're not slapping you now, but when they do, there'll be double-digit inflation that you won't have time to fix. And that's the only pitch I'm going to give you, is that you need to be proactive about putting pieces in place so that you can react to a spike that you're going to see from this insurer, unless they change their plan design. They're using their reserves to keep this flat, and that will come back to bite you. They double-digited 3 years in a row, 1 year over 20%. Caused layoffs right across everywhere.
What did you say just now?
This particular insurer had 3 years of double-digit inflation, and they caused layoffs right across the board everywhere in the community. You may recall it, but,
Right.
and so that's why we keep asking for insurance flexibility at Citgo,
Because you expect it to happen again.
It will.
But you
But it
said
won't under my
up
watch.
3% because of retirement. I just want to write it.
Yeah, it's up 3% because of churn and employees leaving, new employees taking different insurances when they come in. Oftentimes, younger employees take a more robust plan, and also by the fact that retired employees stay on the plan. They don't go away. So if I retire, when I retire, the new mayor is going to need insurance, and you're still going to be paying my insurance.
We have to pay your insurance?
You do.
Can you just change that law?
Even an elected
No,
official
can't
like
change
that?
I've been asking you to change all the kinds of benefits that I get as a retiree, and you've resisted.
Well, because you deserve it.
I never asked.
You didn't say you worked for him, you said you deserved it.
Doesn't matter. So anyway,
I meant the same thing. Words.
and so as you know, this is always usually pretty close.
Yep.
We generally, I think this year we had to come back and ask you for a little bit more money. We get as
And
close
the
as we can.
dynamics of people coming and going.
Yeah, and the more that you try not, especially in these big budgets, you try not to bury too much extra money because it affects everything else you do.
Yeah.
And so these budgets are always close. Next one is liability insurance. This is driven by two factors. One, I'm sorry.
That's the computer, the accounting stuff. What is it? Yes. Is that the accounting side?
GASB 45, there is no appropriation for the, oh, you know what, that
Did
was
we
that was in last year, she put it in 32B. Valerie, that's what it is, Valerie took it out because she thinks it's its own, it's a different, the study, she wanted to show it as a separate part. it didn't exist.
Oh, I don't
It's
have it.
really part
I
of,
must have- I must have
it's always
missed it.
been part of 32B. Like, it's really just a subcategory of 32B, and that's where that appropriation has come from in the past.
Do you have it? Yeah, I don't have it in mind.
Okay.
I don't know.
But
Doesn't matter.
that's how much it costs in 13, and,
So do I have it?
Yes, it's not, there's no appropriation for 14. so-
Oh.
yeah, because it's not the year that we're gonna do it.
Sure.
But she just wanted it to stand out.
Okay. Liability.
That's all it is.
Didn't figure that one out.
Liability.
Okay, so two things here. One, the insurer is telling us that we should expect an increase in liability insurance. We've had claims, sewer backups, automobile accidents, that sort of thing. The other and the bigger piece is the value of the new high school compared to the old high school. The old high school had an $8 million value. The new high school has only, for insurance purposes, because they only insure the building and the
Yeah.
contents, of about 26 or 27 million.
Major increase.
So there's a major increase in liability insurance and property insurance based on the fact that we have a brand new school building.
So if it burns down, there's no help.
Is this liability isn't burning?
Well, that's a part of it. I mean, property insurance, property and liability. The liability is not, I should have said property. This is property and liability insurance. It's the property side of it that's being driven, because it's driven by value. It's so much per thousand,
So
7
this is
cents.
property insurance. Okay, got it. Reserve fund.
I'll get more this time.
Yeah,
20
well,
grand for the new mayor to have fun with.
the problem that you're going to see in this coming budget is that you're going to see a lot of pressure because we're likely going to settle these two long-standing union contracts. And to be quite honest, I think that there are some very tight budgets that need a little push here and there. So I did cushion this with an extra 20,000. I almost always ask for 100, and in recent years I've reduced that 100. This year I was able to maintain it. And as you know, this is subject to appropriation. The request for unemployment was $50,000. This is money that goes into a trust fund. We pay unemployment direct, so
We're self-insured.
yeah, for lack of a better term, that's a good way to put it. Instead of paying a tax based on percentages of payroll and having kind of a reverse account that your unemployment's paid out of, when someone applies for unemployment benefits from the city, they're paid and then we're billed. Farm deal, the PTE.
So we made the request for 50.
I forgot what.
We made the request for 50.
Oh, I think I did. But then I looked at the movement in the account, and looking at how much I think we need and what was in the account,
Took a
it
chance.
looks like 35 would cover it. We're not expecting any.
As I say, have we had any unemployment?
You know, we have one employee that we're not calling back, one seasonal employee that we're not calling back, who will be able to continue to collect unemployment benefits. We don't expect any layoffs in the school department. We expect that if there are reductions in staff, they'll be through attrition. We're not planning any layoffs on the city side. So other than our normal seasonal unemployment costs, we're only going to have this one individual who's not being recalled.
Stabilization.
Yeah, we really should add more to our stabilization fund. As you can see, we haven't put any money into the fund since 2011, but we also haven't taken any money out of the fund.
What's it at right now, Melissa?
1.1 or
I was
thereabouts.
gonna say about 1.2.
1.2 mil is in it.
Could you get?
Now, the fire.
Who requested the 500,000? You?
Yeah.
You just wanted to say, this is what I'd love to do.
It was at one time at 2.2, 2.3.
I know, I remember that.
And that would be a more comfortable place to be. given the cycle of economic downturn that we faced, it's not been, oh gee, a bad year. It's been, gee, it's been bad 3 years or 4 years.
Yeah, but the fact that we have any money in stabilization is a good thing,
Well, yes,
considering
it is.
other citizen towns. I mean, seriously.
And so, just to show that, you know, we probably ought to have money in stabilization, I put a request in.
But you generally have with free cash. This year you couldn't because of this abatement we had.
Well, yeah, so this year, you know, clearly we made a decision to try to capitalize, because we haven't been able to capitalize very much in the prior 2 years. And we didn't put any money in, and you're correct, but what was really driving me is we hadn't taken any money out. We hadn't needed stabilization in 12 and 13. We'd use a little free cash in 12, and we're using a little bit in this budget. And we're using some retained earnings in this budget.
Do you make this request and then deny
I
this
cut myself.
the same day, run around the other side of the desk?
No, I wait another day.
Oh, I could, next day.
I wait another day. And then I just say, you're asking for the moon, you gotta know we're having trouble, we can't afford this. But I don't usually fight with myself too badly.
Anything on enterprise costs, Justin, you usually have these charts at the end, are usually your baby.
And as you can see, it's down a little bit in 14, and that's partly due to the reduced assessment in some of this. But also, I think Melissa's looked at this a bit closer, and the couple of the ratios have changed a little bit. And so we're trying to be truer to what we intend. And so the numbers fine-tune a little bit. In this case, on behalf of enterprises, it went down a little bit, about $20,000.
Because we're not gonna vote till the next meeting, I think if we have any questions as individuals, we could send them to Melissa or Mike ahead of time so that we don't have to take a lot of time at the next meeting.
And I think we owe you
I think
an
doing all those
explanation.
sections, we don't want to.
Kim, stabilization balance, and.
Oh, yeah.
Do we need to get to?
So we're going to give you a little bit more explanation about what happened in the assessor's office to the clerical position
Right,
over
that's Kim.
time.
Right.
Why was he here tonight?
Peter.
Remember Peter for the assessment, unless he thought the.
Peter has a final version of the pilot agreement.
Pilot, oh, he's got
Is
to
that
put that in.
Borrego? Is that the Borrego?
And I looked at it quickly in the hall, and it needs a little bit more fun.
But then it'll come to us through
It'll come to you through me.
agenda.
And likely it's your, now that we not your next week, what would be your June meeting.
So Justin, if we don't talk about your senior thing until July, you okay with that?
Yes, I am.
Because I'm really tired.
Right, I hear you, Dan. Okay, well, I
I
hear
don't think we're gonna do.
a motion to adjourn by anyone?
I'd make it, but I can't.
Justin?
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Continued until July.
Meeting adjourned.